Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, monsieur le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Claude.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Southern. Madame le deputy Labby.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Tadier. Monsieur le deputy Luce.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Doublé. Monsieur le deputy Morel.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Lehegara. Monsieur le deputy Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Ward.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Alves. Madame le deputy Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Gorse.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Farnham. Madame le deputy Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Nezek. Monsieur le deputy Joseph. Monsieur le deputy Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Coles.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Poré. Monsieur le deputy Ward.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Miles.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Curtis. Madame le deputy Feltham. Madame le deputy Binet.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Jeune. Madame le deputy Miller.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Howe.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Binet. Monsieur le deputy Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Curtis. Madame le deputy Ward.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Stevenson. Monsieur le deputy Andrews.
Monsieur le greffier.
Prions Dieu. Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom, nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération étant accompagnée de ta bénédiction, et réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple qui t'a plu de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant « Notre Père, qui es aux cieux,
Ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite en la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés.
et ne nous induis point en tentation,
mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles.
Amen. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Monsieur le deputy Southern.
Défaut.
Monsieur le deputy Tadier.
Défaut.
Madame le deputy Doublé.
Défaut.
Madame le deputy Lehegara.
Sir, Deputy Lehegara is attending a medical appointment and will be in as soon as possible.
Excusez.
Madame le deputy Alves.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Farnham.
Défaut.
Monsieur le deputy Nezek. Monsieur le deputy Joseph. Madame le deputy Poré.
Défaut.
Malad, I think.
Well, if you're going to take the oath,
She was
you can't be,
yesterday, so I'm
I
presuming
think.
so, but I can get back to you if you prefer, sir, to be certain.
I mean, if she was Ballard yesterday and she gave you instructions yesterday, well then let's procead on the basis she's malade.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Madame la députée est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Madame la députée Felton.
Présente.
Madame la députée Jeune.
Présente.
Madame la députée Stevenson.
Parental duties. Les États sont constitués.
Sir, could I raise the defo on Deputy Tadia as he's now sat down?
Yes,
Sir, I would like to raise a defo on Deputy Dublin, please.
Deputy Dublé? Yes.
Sir, could I just advise the Assembly before we start that I have to be absent for a while to attend a funeral this morning?
Thank you very much, Comitab.
Sir, could I advise the Assembly I have a family medical appointment at 2 o'clock. I'll try to get back as soon as I can this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Very well. We resume now the debate excuse me, on P.63. Does any member wish, and the other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to raise a couple of points for consideration. I think the most important thing is that we are in a sort of time when remote working is becoming a matter of great significance for us. The nature of work is changing, and I think it's imperative that we also go with that change. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It's not particularly a trend in terms of the way in which we are proposing introducing remote working, but it's really about how this Assembly can be as productive as possible and how it can value the contribution of all members in circumstances that don't allow them to be here physically in person. One of the important things I think somebody mentioned yesterday, or a member mentioned yesterday, was this notion of visibility. And I think that's really, really important that we are visible to our constituents. But that visibility doesn't necessarily extend to being physically present. The visibility is about what we say, what we bring, what we contribute to the debate. And I also think as well that what we have available to us is an opportunity to model really good standards of remote working so that we can show to the electorate, to the island, that this is an opportunity to modernise some of our assembly processes, as it were, that won't have any detrimental impact on the way in which we operate our responsibilities. I think the other thing is that we mention in our policies and our frameworks, our legal frameworks, issues like reducing carbon emissions. I mean, if we're to take reducing carbon emissions really seriously, remote working is one of those areas that we can be seen to be actively contributing to reducing carbon emissions, but by also being productive in the work that we're doing. And I think we have to be mindful that we're just not saying these things without actually living and breathing the values. The other thing that I would like to offer is that the Assembly is about leadership. It's about leading change. And if we're to lead change in inclusive and diverse practice, I think one of the ways in which we could consider the importance of remote working is to recognise that there will be people with different abilities and needs who want to make a valuable contribution to the Assembly's work, not only in terms of their disability or their restrictions, but also in terms of the fact that when people have got long-term conditions, that we create the conditions for people to be able to contribute and to be able to bring valuable perspectives to the Assembly, and not just entirely rely on the fact that people have to be sitting here to be able to do that. So, sir, That's all I wanted to say. I think we've got an opportunity to demonstrate that we can actually do things differently, we can do it well, we can do it productively, and we can also take into account the different circumstances, the different diverse needs the Assembly has in making that contribution to the debate. Thank you.
Very much. Conor Thompson.
Good morning, sir. So I'm sure that most members will be aware that I've been unable to attend due to injury since September, and I've not been permitted to drive since the 27th of September, but I've attended every meeting on Teams with a request to the GREF and request that you informed and the greffiers informed of the reasons why I'm not present. So to me, that having a Teams invitation, it's a privilege to actually be able to join online. I mean, I was told yesterday it could be a year before I'm back to normal. Well, you know, with the thought of not being able to attend for a year, I've got a duty of care to my parishioners, as I'm sure everybody has a duty of care to their parishioners or their constituents. So this is just updating. We're continually updating everything, and this is just updating what we should be doing. So when this last came up for debate, I said, you made a statement that our commitment, you will attend state sittings. That's it. And I said then, well, the people who are trying to join on Teams are just doing that. They're trying to attend. And I think it's most important that we are able to join remotely. And I said, I congratulate PPC for bringing this forward. And I urge members to support this proposition, parts A, B and C. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Conor Tobb. Deputy Reniff.
Thank you, sir. So there's two things we're talking about here, I think. One is the principles that are at stake, and then there's the specifics of what's actually proposed in the proposition. And if I think about the principles, I think that there's been some very, very interesting points made in this debate, and it's made me think quite deeply about what is the role of a deputy, how should an assembly conduct itself in the modern era. And the principle that I suppose I have come to believe in more strongly the longer I've been in the Assembly, not long now, but compared to many, but nevertheless longer than a while ago, is that attendance in this Assembly is crucial. And I think that the ability to listen to debates in person, to read body language, to see how people react, to know when people are in or not in the debating chamber, to see when people apologise, as I've had cause to do on more than one occasion, whether that looks sincere, and so on. Those are matters which I think are important, and this chamber, I noticed standing order actually makes a very clear point on this, that attendance in the Assembly is the presumption. So as a fundamental principle, that's where I start. And I was interested in Deputy Tadia's comment, which was to take a kind of an absolutist view on that principle, which was to say, well, if you can't attend, you can't attend, and that's fine, but you shouldn't necessarily assume that you can contribute just because you can't be here. And there's no shame in being malade, there's no shame in being excusé. Those are perfectly valid positions to take on the basis of the facts. And I don't think, despite the odd comments on social media and so on, that most members of the public would begrudge members who are absent for good reason. But I also had cause to listen to Deputies Jeune, Miles and Doublé, who made counter-arguments about the need to respect the position of people who can't attend for various reasons. And that those were reasons which might be very valid and which would not prevent people from contributing in a worthwhile way to the conduct of this Assembly. So I find myself in a kind of middle position. I think there is a danger that we go too far down the route of remote working. I do not think that remote working is a default position for this assembly. I don't. There is an argument that could take this to its logical extreme. People have argued we can make use of technology. Indeed, we could meet entirely remotely. That's an entirely feasible proposition today. We could meet on Teams. There is no need to meet at all. But there is a purpose in meeting in person. We are social animals. We derive a lot of our communication from being here in person. And I know that people, myself included, are swayed in debates, and that process, that chemistry, if you like, is different in person to when it is remote. And you know, I know that in the UK Parliament, for example, when I first came to London, I stayed with 2 MPs who put me up because I had to move to London at short notice, who I knew from my time doing my research. And they lived in the Division Bell, what was known as the Division Bell area. I think it still is. And that is any house or property which is within 8 minutes travel time of the House of Commons. And if you live in the Division Bell area, you are entitled to be able to, I think some people had division bells installed in their houses so that they could hear when a vote was 8 minutes away and make it over to the Assembly and vote. That is a kind of a thing which happens when members are essentially voting fodder and they are required to vote in order to meet their party whip. I think that this Assembly would not want to go down that route. We are a debating chamber. We listen to each other's arguments and we make decisions on the basis of those. And so I think for all those reasons, the principles to me seem to be, that principle seems to be very important. But if we look at the specifics of what's actually being debated here, what's actually being debated, as Deputy Ward reminds us, is to look at the actual, Deputy Rob Ward, to look at the actual proposition, is 3 things. And so I think we're compelled to sort of look at what those three things mean. And if I focus on the second one in particular, I note that it is in a tightening of the rules around attendance compared to what is currently in existence. And I think good. I think that is a sensible tightening. It allows for many of the points that have been raised by Deputy Jean Miles Dublé and others in terms of the ability to attend remotely when circumstances require it, but makes clear that that is not a default position, that it requires a decent reason. It also is the case that proposition that we are considering doesn't have to be the end of the matter. Several members have raised other circumstances that they might wish to consider and to be included as reasons to attend remotely. And of course, that could be considered in the future. So we have to focus on what is actually before us. What we have before us is a clarification of the rules, particularly around sickness and caring responsibilities. And I also am comforted by the fact that the proposition makes clear that detailed guidance will be provided by yourself, sir, in conjunction with PPC, and that good thought, I'm sure, will be given to that and will provide further clarification for members of those circumstances. So I have no problem with Part B. I do have a problem with Part C. I think there is a huge danger with Part C that we legitimate the idea of attendance from wherever one is, whatever one is doing. And for the reasons that I've stated in terms of the principles which I bring to this, I don't think that is appropriate. I don't think that we should be in a situation where, for example, a minister or a member could be abroad attending some conference and simply get a text message a few minutes before a vote to say, can you just log on now, or not log on, but go to the thing, pay attention, and you might be able to vote on Teams. I find that a situation that I do not feel we should be going down. I think people are able to make choices when they go overseas about whether or not they are choosing to prioritise the Assembly or not. They can have very good reasons, as I said earlier, for being excusé, very good reasons. But those reasons are reasons not to be here, not to be taking part, and may mean you're not taking part in a debate. And I think that is a little bit of a slippery slope, and I don't feel comfortable in voting for it at the moment. So my position is to support Part B, but to reject Part C, and I thank the Assembly for listening to the point 7.
Very much. Deputy Mayor, did you have...
So two things. Firstly, can I raise a defo on Deputy Farnham?
Indeed, yes.
And also, I'd like to ask the AG a question, please.
Yes, you can ask the AG a question. You can't speak, but you can't do a speech in any way or form, but any member can ask the AG a question at any point. So provided it doesn't mutate into some form of speech, then you can.
It's not a speech, sir, but I could perhaps explain that we've discussed the question of disability a couple of times in the context of paragraph B, and I think the law requires us, if somebody has a disability...
Well, I'm sorry, you have to ask a question.
What are our legal obligations? Do we already have legal obligations under the law to make reasonable adjustments where someone has a disability, and that this is not the place to deal with it? Thank you.
So your question for the AG is, are there already obligations in the law to make adjustments for disability within this Assembly?
There is a duty on employers and owners of premises, for example, to which the public have access, to make reasonable adjustments for disabled persons. And indeed, disability is a protected characteristic under the discrimination law, and a person is automatically unfairly dismissed if they are dismissed for disability. But that general legal position is modified in respect of the States Assembly in that under Article 34 of the States of Jersey law, there is a general privilege in relation to states proceedings, and no states member can be subject to criminal or civil proceedings in respect of states' business. So the general duties could not really be enforced against a states member for failing to make reasonable adjustments.
Yes, and the States Assembly per se isn't
it's not
a corporation, so it couldn't. You can't.
No, it could not be sued collectively, but its members could not be subject to civil or criminal proceedings in respect of a failure to take reasonable adjustments for disability. It would be a matter for the Assembly itself, because the Assembly is not subject, as I've said, to similar civil, or states members are not subject to civil proceedings in the courts in respect of what they do in states' business. But it is a political matter for the states itself in respect of any enforcement of standing orders as to what the consequences of a failure to take reasonable adjustments would be. And that would be a matter for the states collectively to deal with under its processes under the understanding orders. So it's dealt with not in the courts, but it's a matter for this Assembly.
Very much. A number of lights have gone on, and I have noted them. But are there any of those lights directed as further questions to the Attorney General? Do you wish to ask a question of the Attorney General?
Thank you, sir. May I just seek from the Attorney General kindly whether or not we discussed yesterday the issue, the reality that ADHD is a reality for some members. I know I'm one of them. That is a correct, as I understand it, a sort of disability, but it has certain protected characteristics, and other people with mental health issues generally, but does the cover of those matters sit alongside, or are they subject to confirmation by the controls that are in this proposition? I don't want to go into great detail, but I just want to raise particularly the issue of defined challenges that individuals have because I won't be the only one that has sometimes challenges in relation to mental well health.
Are you able to assist with that?
Well, sir, it's. I fear that it may be a matter for your guidance, sir, in that Part B of the proposition creates an exception in respect of members' health or the health of a family member or household member. So health is not a defined term, it's a general word. So the question of whether a particular health condition, such as ADHD, in relation to the question asked by Deputy Joseph, so that I fear it would be a question of degree, whether the condition is such to affect the member's health to a degree that they are not able to come to the Assembly in person. But I suspect, sir, that that is going to be a matter for further guidance, because Part 1B of Part B of this proposition says that the bailiff, following consultation with the Privileges and Procedures Committee, must issue guidance on the interpretation of paragraph 1A. So the question of what is a health condition may well be one that is requires some further guidance, because health is a general word, sir, and what one person might consider to be a serious health condition might not be seen as a serious health condition to others. So I rather suspect that there will need to be some further guidance that is issued if Part B of the proposition were to be adopted.
Thank you.
So, may I thank the Attorney General for his question, sir? And I won't raise a point of order now, sir, but I will raise a point of order at the appropriate time, that you may make a ruling based upon the facts, based upon the interpretation of this.
Well, I think
kindly.
I think what this particular paragraph, if members vote for it, they're voting for the principle of health being a reason. And the matter for precisely what falls within that pot is a matter for guidance, which I will issue after I've conferred with PPC. And there may be, and it may be that PPC will wish to take representations from members more generally, so that we get a definition that members are happy with if this part of the proposition is passed. But I think no one should vote for or against it on the basis that it will or will not cover any particular specific difficulty that people have. Deputy Scott, you have a question for the attorney?
Yes, sir. Just to clarify, please. So, am I to understand that the definition of health, as set out in this proposition, can be determined by the PPC itself, subsequent to the passing of this proposition? And is there any required time frame within which this guidance would be produced?
Well, that's a matter for me. It's not a matter for the attorney.
I just wondered whether there was an actual
it's an interpretation.
requirement.
The answer is no. There is no time frame involved, but one can reasonably assume that people are going to want this to be effective if it's passed by members, and therefore guidance will be collaborated upon and issued as soon as it reasonably can be. That would be the most I can say about that. As to whether health is determined, I think my instinctive reaction, and it can only be that, not having conferred with PPC, is that there are certain things which obviously are matters of health and which it would be unreasonable not to consider them as anything other than matters of health. And temporary illness, for example, which incapacitates a person in certain respects, would certainly be one. Long-standing conditions may or may not have different considerations, and that's something that I'm certainly not in a position to make a ruling on at this stage.
Thank you, sir.
Well. Deputy Tally, you had your light on. Was that as a question or to speak?
It's a question, sir, because I've already spoken. So it's a question to the...
All right.
Thank you. We have to vote on the wording that's before us, and one of the words before us is if, due to unforeseen circumstances, an elected member is unable to attend. So the question is around unforeseen. Am I right in thinking that unforeseen is not the same as unforeseeable? So actually, it could be something that that theoretically anything can be unforeseen if you didn't see it, envisage it happening.
Again, I think that's a matter for me rather than for the Attorney General, because it's the interpretation of the proposition. There is a distinction between unforeseeable, which is in the circumstances no one could reasonably have foreseen it. Unforeseen must mean not foreseen by a particular individual at a time. But I think it must import with it reasonable foreseeability would be my instinctive interpretation of that. So if someone hasn't foreseen something which should frankly have been blindingly obvious to them, then I'm unlikely to be sympathetic that it falls within that definition.
So can I just say, though, it's a problem in the sense that we are voting on what's before us. It doesn't say unreasonably, reasonably foreseen.
Well, this is a
another
speech. Deputy, this is a speech. Please don't continue. The answer is the Assembly is voting on precisely what's in front of it, with all its ambiguities. Is this a question, Deputy Ward? Deputy Ward.
So it may well be for you, but it may be for the AG. Just to confirm, if when this is voted on today, if it's accepted, does it come immediately into force, or is there a period where we have to wait for the guidance? Just to confirm that, sir.
Yes, I think. I mean, it simply says that the bailiff will consult with PPC and issue guidance. I think that's an iterative process. There can be fairly short, immediate guidance issues which says it will at least cover the following circumstances, and then a little bit more reflection can give rise to further guidance later on. But I think guidance is required. I think there'll be some which, if necessary, can be decided on a case-by-case basis where it will simply be obvious that it will apply. But that's as much as a help, I think, as I can give at the moment. Very well. Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. And after all that clarification, I feel that my speech here might be a little bit redundant, but here we go. I was just going to basically comment on the mechanics of this proposition, because I think, I'm not sure if there's confusion or if this proposition allows for so much, depending on how the votes roll. So Part A asks us to rescind P.87 2021, which allows for the continuation of remote participation. This allows people to remote participate for whatever reason they like. There's not on health grounds, not on childcaring responsibilities. If you just don't want to put a suit and tie on that morning, you can participate at home, keep your camera off, and that is going to be acceptable. And actually, there's not. If we're talking about this modern world and modern ways of doing things, that's probably not necessarily a bad thing to allow us to continue to remote participate for whatever reason without closing that book down. So it's my understanding, if you'd like things to continue as they are in the way that we are currently functioning, you'll need to vote against Part A. If we vote against Part A, I assume then that means that Part B will fall away, and so therefore we will not be restricting this on health grounds. However, if members do believe that we're being too liberal with our ability to remote participate, obviously that's the reason to vote in favour of Part A. So then you can then vote in favour of Part B, which will then limit the reasons why people can members can participate online. It's down solely to either their own health or members of their immediate family's health. And I think it is very important that when we're making this vote that people decided that that is what they want. Because I have heard members talking about having childcare responsibilities and still wanting to participate online. But if you vote for Part A and vote for Part B, that would not actually be an acceptable reason to participate online. So I think it's very clear that we make sure that there's that distinction between how we are voting, and just some of the debates I think have maybe confused and greyed that area slightly. Part Part C obviously is very, very different, and is probably the only one that really stands on its own because it does refer to us participating off island. Now, I'm aware that I am someone who has been able to take advantage of the technology and allowing us to do that in relation to one of the first votes we had at the start of this year. Deputy Scott brought a short and emergency proposition to ask the Assembly's permission for us to do that. Now, I think in the grand scheme, I think that was a very functional way to do it. In that way, the Assembly gets to decide at that point that we can then, there is something that is of an urgent enough nature, or of an unforeseen nature, that we can actually participate in that way. Because I think all members should be trying to make whatever effort to at least be on island to participate in our state's debates. Because this is the island that we represent, and this is where we should be. Obviously, yes, that additional sitting that we had at the start of this year meant that a lot of us had plans, some holidays booked for a very, very long period of time, family implications within those holidays, because our timetable of state sittings are scheduled 18 months in advance. September the year before is when we know, at least 6 months for the first one of the year, but we also know that because it's indicated at the end of the timetable we provided the year before. So I just wanted to make, I have my views and my opinions on all these parts and articles. I hope that the chair of PPC will take these in parts, because I think it is very, very important to get this right, but also that members realise that, like I say, that if you vote to rescind, vote for Part A, you are removing access to participate how you wish. Part B will then restrict how people can participate on island, and Part C is self-explanatory for all members, so I will leave my comments there.
Much indeed. What I overlooked to mention to members, and I'm sure members will be completely aware of it in any event, is that there is draft guidance as part of the proposition attached as an appendix, which may or may not have covered some of the points that members were concerned about. I haven't had the opportunity to consider that or discuss it with PPC, so it can't be said with certainty that is what will be adopted, but there is some draft. Secondly, Deputy Poré, although she was marked as Mallard, is in fact present by remote communication, so she is participating in the Assembly. Deputy Balash.
So I find myself absolutely in agreement with the sentiments expressed by Deputy Renouf, and I don't propose to repeat what he said, except to emphasise the very great importance, as it seems to me, of members being in the chamber if it is at all possible. I want to say just a few words on paragraph C, because it seems to me that paragraph C would place us at the top of a very slippery slope. If due to unforeseen circumstances an elected member is unable to be in Jersey, if the purpose is to allow members to participate, which I assume is the underlying purpose of that provision, why does it matter whether the circumstances are unforeseen or not? If the purpose is to allow members to be here, members to participate, if they are away at a conference or on state's business or even on holiday, why should they not be allowed to participate? It seems to me that there is no logic in qualifying the provision by adding the words unforeseen. And the other factor is that unforeseen seems to me, sir, to be almost entirely subjective. Did the member foresee the circumstances or not? And that lies within the member's own head. It's not a question of being foreseeable or reasonably foreseeable. It's a question of whether or not the member actually foresaw the circumstances in question. And I think it would be very difficult, sir. I have the greatest admiration for your skills, but I think it would be very difficult for the bailiff to give guidance on a matter of that kind, because it all depends. And I hope members will reject paragraph C.
Deputy Scott, you put your light on as if to speak.
Yes.
You have already spoken.
Yes, but I wondered if you could just give some guidance about what would happen if members voted for A and not B, because that's not clear to me. But also, some members have referred to C, but if I understand this, C is part of B. So we have paragraphs A and B refers to...
Well, I think that kind of guidance can almost certainly be given by the chair of PPC when she sums up the case, because it's she who will be talking about the effects of these various votes. And I mean, that members only need to be fully aware of that when the vote comes.
Thank you. I would appreciate knowing what I'm voting for. Thank you.
Well, clearly you must be told what you're voting for.
So can I just clarify one issue which may explain the point that Deputy Scott is raising? If you look at the PDF version online, it has the correct specific ABC. If you look at just look at the version on the website, not the PDF version, it is highly confusing as to what are parts A, B, and C. So if I recommend everybody looks at the PDF version.
Thank you very much.
Sir, I thank the Deputy.
I only ever look at the PDF version, so for me, perhaps it is clearer. Connie Tarver, St Mary.
Thank you, sir. And a very brief point for me. So, as members have said, we are voting on what is before us in the proposition. There appears to be some, not disparity, but different interpretations of what in paragraph B health might mean. And my simple question is, following on from your own reference, sir, whether the Chair of PPC would indeed seek the views of the Assembly as a whole as to guidance before issuing that guidance in consultation with itself. Thank you, sir.
Very much indeed, Connie Tarver. Deputy Hull.
Thank you, sir. I agree completely with Deputy Reniff, and I really admire what Deputy Balish has said. My only concern is that there could be a case when an individual, a member of this state, has to go to the UK to receive medical treatment such as radiotherapy. They could need to accompany a child or their parent for some procedure, and they would be in a position that they could, if they were allowed to, through C, be here remotely. And I don't think we should take that opportunity away from members, because we are here to represent our parishioners, our constituents, and just because we are not able to be here, actually physically, which I agree should be the default position, but I do think we should be voting for C, sir. Thank you.
The Chair of PPC will indicate whether that's covered by B or not.
So can I raise the defo on Deputy Sutherland, please?
Yes, the defo is raised on Deputy Sutherland. Deputy Gorst.
Thank you, sir. And I realise we're coming to the end. The two words that really struck me throughout yesterday was trust and common sense. And we know as a community at large, and certainly across the geography where we reside, trust and common sense are two words which are falling into disuse or disrepute or disrepair, whichever way we want to look at it. And it's important, those two words, though, are important to those who put us in this place, as they are to all people who elect any parliament. Like Deputy Tadia, we could look back and say that we would just like to move back to how it was before COVID, how it was before people could work remotely, how it was when everybody had to be present, when there was really very few excuses that were possible. But we can't. We cannot turn the clock back. We cannot go back to a position where work is only done when people are present in a particular place. And so the importance of trust and common sense, as I sense we are about to move away from where we were in COVID, but still find a practical way of allowing members to partake in the democratic process whilst at the same time managing their own ill health, their ill health of someone within the household in which they live, and that can be a multi-generation household. That doesn't need to just be children, it could be elderly parents as well, that at very short notice require some caring duty to take place. And we always in this assembly, and I think always in Jersey, have proudly understood the need to put family and community first. Our entire honorary system is on putting others first, is on putting our community first, and that flows through to our family as well. And we don't want to lose that. I think we have an opportunity today to enhance that. But we will need to deal with the issues of trust and common sense. That's going to fall on your shoulders, sir, initially. I've got no doubt at all about your common sense approach to this issue, and I hope that when PPC have that initial guidance, obviously, as you say, the drafts are already included with the proposition, they do circulate and consult widely with states members. I know that's not always easy to do because we're busy doing other things, but that will be critical. And I would say, actually, the point that Deputy Howells raised, to my mind, that fits firmly under B. We don't need to concede C because it can be prescribed, as you all adequately and articulated earlier, sir. Some health conditions will be absolutely clear that they can be in the guidance. And the case where someone has to go to the UK for whatever health treatment, that is a health issue. And they should be enabled to participate remotely whilst they're sat on the bed having the drip in their arm or whatever it is. It doesn't require us, in my mind, to concede point C. Of course, if I was being totally personal in looking at this, point C would be absolutely ideal for me because I never need to get up at 4:30 in the morning to catch the 7 o'clock flight to be here in the States ever again. That's not the approach that we should be taking as an assembly. I think those issues can be dealt with in point B for my part. We come back again to trust and common sense. The issue will be, and I'm not saying that any of us will, but the temptation might be for some of us to abuse this system as we let it bed down. And therefore, sir, I think your guidance, as we're consulting on it, needs to think about what is the situation around abuse and how we ensure that it's not abused, but that we allow participation in those difficult situations. But we also have a process in place whereby we can approach each other with trust, but we can also apply common sense. So I will be voting against A. I will be supporting B, but not at this time do I think we should support C. But I do think those issues can be covered under B. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Bennett.
So I just wondered, I'm not minded to vote for Part C, but I just wondered if you're able to assure us that the matters that General Gorse has referred to can be covered under Part B, because I don't think anybody should be precluded from participation for health reasons wherever they happen to be. So are you able to assure us?
I can't go further than exactly what it says on its terms. That is a matter for interpretation, but it appears simply from its terms that Part B says that the standing order applies to an elected member who is absent at the start of the meeting or any continuation day for a reason related either to the member's health or to the health of a family member or household member. And it seems to me that if they're absent because they've got to go to England for treatment or accompanying a member of their household or family for health reasons, that's squarely covered within the wording of the section.
So is it not the case, though, that you're either excusé or absent de lille and you can't be both? So in order to be excusé, you have to be currently on island, and therefore there'd need to be a change. Is that correct? Or?
Well, I think under this standing order, you would be neither excusé nor absent de lille. You would be participating remotely.
So could I just clarify something I just said? I fear I've inadvertently misled the Assembly. I've just been reminded that actually I will be supporting A, because A is the rescindment, rather than as I indicated during my speech. So I apologise for that, sir.
Well, you're allowed to do a point of clarification. One moment. Yes, sorry for the slight delay. Yes, Deputy Paul, the answer is I wasn't proposing to add to what I have just indicated, but I think there's a process of clarification going on with the Chair of PPC, and there may be further points to add to that when the closing speeches are made. Very well. Deputy Morell?
Now I'm confused. If I can ask 3 questions just to clarify for myself.
I just called on Deputy Morell.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, now I'm getting slightly confused. Deputy Morell, you had your light on, you wish to speak. I've just called upon you. You'd like to speak?
Yes, sir.
And you would like to speak, Deputy Gardner?
I would like to ask points of clarification from yourself. It can be before vote, because I'm confused now a bit more.
Okay, well, I think perhaps there should be an opportunity to do that, but that can be before the final speech, perhaps. And it may be that that's a point of clarification that I should first discuss, if members have no objection to that, with the Chair of PPC, because it's important that I have understood the intent behind this, which I may or may not have done. So it's a question of doing that. So, Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And just very quickly, it's really to join Deputy Balash in, I agree with Deputy Balash's perspective, and I personally find it hard to support C. And just want to give one reason, and actually Deputy Gorst, referring to his 4:30 a.m. start is really one of the main reasons why I'm against C. Because if you're travelling abroad for reasons outside of B or outside of state's business, etc., one of the things I have noticed, sir, is an increase in the number of members travelling back from somewhere, often the UK, somewhere else, and their flight is delayed. And so we've been marking people excusez for delayed flights, when often, particularly if it's away for just personal reasons, leisure reasons, getting the last flight back on the Monday evening or 6, 7 a.m. on the morning of the state's debate, to me, that is something which puts your presence on time in this assembly in jeopardy. And so therefore, when there is a delay, because often we know there are delays to travel arrangements, personally, I don't see that as a reason to be marked excusez. For me, that is a reason to be marked defo, because the member who travels back at 7 in the morning on the day of debate is taking that risk that the flight may be delayed and that they therefore may not be here. The same with the night before. If there's fog the night before, in my view, and I'm not saying I've done this 100% of the time, but in my view, it is always best to leave a day between your travel arrangements and the state's debate commencing. And that's one of the main reasons for me that I don't like C, because for me, did you know that the plane would be delayed? No, therefore it is unforeseen. But could you have foresaw that there is the possibility the plane could be delayed? Absolutely. If you live in Jersey, you very well know that the plane could be delayed. And so from my perspective, C isn't something I feel comfortable with, because I think then we will see, it encourages members, I believe, to make those travel arrangements which are cutting it fine, which do jeopardise their ability to be in the Assembly at 9:30 in the morning. And that was really my only intervention. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sir, due to unforeseen circumstances, I've managed to make good use of the Teams channel for reasons that the Assembly is aware. What is foreseeable is that I will need to use those facilities for as long as I'm able. And I thank the greffier for sometimes letting me into the channel, sometimes at short notice. I'm quite happy with A and B, but for C, I think it's fairly innocuous. What we're actually saying to ourselves is we're a bunch of naughty boys and ladies. We're going to take advantage. We are at the top of the tree in Jersey's establishment, and our public think we should do better than that. And I don't see why we should be anticipating that we're going to take advantage of paragraph C. Unforeseen circumstances can be comfortably developed and ruled on by the combination of the bailiff, the greffiers and PPC. So I will be voting for all three, sir. Thank you very much.
Leaving aside the questions that Deputy Gardner wishes to, clarifications she wishes to gain, does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Aye.
Thank you, sir. I'm absolutely in favour of Part A and Part B, but I do have some difficulties voting for Part C. A number of members have mentioned their concerns, and I have an additional concern to add, which revolves around members on state's business. In Appendix 2 on page 15, in reference to the previous debate on P.63, it says the provisions of P.63 2022 only sought to allow participation from outside the island in unforeseen circumstances. Absence on state's business does not fall within that definition and has not been included in the reasons that would allow a member to participate remotely from outside Jersey. This is reiterated again in Appendix 3 under remote participation while outside Jersey, where it states, members can be marked absent for roll call due to being absent from Jersey on state's business. Standing Order 55A2A cannot be used by any members for remote participation on any day when they are outside the island on state's business, including days on which it had been planned for them to travel. So, sir, you could easily have the scenario where a member is on state's business in London and all planes are ceased due to a storm or such like, and they would not be able to join remotely. And yet somebody who was on a beach in Florida and had the same difficulty getting back to London would be allowed because they were not on state's business. And therefore, I believe this to be totally inequitable, and I cannot support Part C. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Fun.
A quick couple of points, sir. And I've mulled this over, and I'm minded to support all three, although slightly uncomfortable with paragraph C. But I think we have to rely on ourselves to all behave correctly. I can't support the members who have reiterated the importance of being in this assembly, and that's our first duty whenever we can. Deputy Dublé, in her speech, referenced hearing some interesting conversations or participating in the coffee room. And, you know, that's part of it. Being here, the debates don't just go on in this chamber. We have useful discussions in the ante rooms. We have discussions where we learn information, we can ask each other questions. we can seek clarification. There is a dynamic there that I think is important in any democracy. You ask any parliamentarian, they will say the fact that we all get together is important, and I think we all take our oath to do that, and I believe most of us, even if we support all of these this proposition, will continue to do that, sir, as it is our duty to do so. In relation to the point that Deputy Ayer made, I'm slightly comforted by the draft guidance as a part of the amendment, particularly the paragraph that's at the bottom of page 17 says, in looking to participate remotely, members should expect to be able to take part in the meeting as fully as if they were in or around the chamber. So I was thinking about when Deputy Gorst and I were in Edinburgh last week, we can't dip in and out of meetings we're having there to pop in and vote in the Assembly. The same as if you've been delayed in travel, you've got having a quick coffee at the airport waiting to board your flight. You know, I presume, sir, the meaning of that is if you're going to participate remotely in a day, you have to have the day to participate in the sitting. And that gives me some comfort as to the ambiguity, shall we call it, or the interpretation of some of what's here, sir. So I am slightly nervous about paragraph C. I'm not decided. I did say to the chair of PPC I was supportive of the proposition. I think I am. But I just wanted to make those brief points, sir. Thank you.
Much indeed. Does any other member wish to speak before I ask Deputy Gardner her questions? Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I want to absolutely support what is, I think, an almost balanced and perfect approach to participate in States Assembly meetings. I absolutely believe the importance of attending in person in this Assembly, and I also recognise that there are valid reasons why members may, for good reason, want to participate but need to do it remotely. A modern and inclusive Assembly must accommodate, in a modern democracy, circumstances that sometimes can be foreseen, sometimes are exceptional, but are necessary and are fair. Physical presence in this Assembly is the cornerstone, as I think Deputy Ranif and Deputy Balash and other speakers have said. We're a debating chamber. You change your mind listening to the facts. And that's really, really very important. And I can't stop that particular observation, sir, by saying that I hope that continues, because I have witnessed in the last few weeks, it's not a negative reflection, it's something that I think can be made more positive. When debates no longer matter, this Assembly no longer matters. When there is a government majority, and I don't criticise the government. I've been on the other side of receiving that, the government always gets its way. When the block vote of the government, plus some, whoever they may be, gets the guaranteed way, I think we lose a lot of the democracy, the debate, and that is, I think, really, really important. And I must say, sir, having been out of this Assembly, unelected, as I stood down in 2018, I thought that this Assembly, watching remotely and during COVID, was an exemplar, sir, of digital technology. I think we were the first, I wasn't here, you, sir, and the rest of the members that were there present there, were the first, I think, Parliament in the world to go virtual. And I think I remain at the view that Jersey can be a technological superpower. We got the first fibre ubiquitous, and we were the first Parliament to get back on track, and our financial services industry, because of fibre, kept on working. We've just got to use it well. And as the Constable has said, I will let members into two slight things I've not said before. The reason why I knew that we had a problem with fibre is because I was looking after my late father, who absolutely insisted on coming to this Assembly right until the end of his almost days. There was another member that was the bailiff, and I think everybody remembers when he came here. But I realised that he needed fast internet at home, and we didn't have it at St Saviour. And then when I got into the decision of doing it, we got fibre, and I think that's great. But now we need to use it, and we need to use it better. And I think this Assembly can use technology better, but there is no alternative unless there are good reasons for not being here. So I think we can permit remote participation. We can affirm the principle that no member should be excluded from able to participate due to certain reasons. There is perhaps in hindsight, and Captain Hindsight always has maybe an idea, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not going to criticise in any way the PPC for using the word unforeseen, but I would express the hope in supporting C, because I think if we don't support C, then we're not going to be able to allow that participation outside of the island. This is the first time that it's actually been permitted. I found myself last year having to discharge the role of External Relations Minister and dealing with a number of challenges. I had a flat in London. I could have permitted remotely, and I was sorry that I couldn't. Many people thought I was completely absent, but I wasn't. But I just couldn't because of that standing order. It was exceptional that I couldn't participate for reasons that members will know, because of a very close bereavement. But I could have done it, and I think there could be reasons. And I would ask, sir, if we do pass paragraph C, that you take counsel with PPC and you give the, if there is other members that have said, that you give the widest possible interpretation of unforeseen as possible until this Assembly has the opportunity of maybe clarifying that further. So if I may invite you respectfully, sir, to, if the Assembly is minded, which I think they should, I really think that, yes, you should be here, you should be tried to be here, you should get tried back to Jersey, but how many times have I seen Deputy Gorst and Deputy Balash trying to get on a flight, and the former Chief Minister, when we were working together, trying to get back to the island to be here, because we'd be scolded if we wouldn't. They're exhausting days. It's great work. We love doing it. I happened to see Deputy Gorst yesterday doing it. There should be reasons. It won't be taken advantage of. There's an oversight of ministerial conduct, and there's an oversight of conduct of members. And I think that the President of PPC, who kind of discharges the role of I'm going to say speaker assistant or deputy something, but there's something here. We have a speaker, sir, there's controversy about that. I remain firmly of the view we can work with it. We need to have Latimer House principles, but we can do it. So I think we can take the best of the past and the best of the future and make practical, reasonable, balanced, respectful arrangements in place that respect our traditions and take note of the future things. I want an Assembly that does allow all people that can to participate, and sometimes with the brilliant assistance of the GREF, who I must give a shout out for, that yesterday I wasn't able to be here present because I didn't get my suit and couldn't get here on time, but I got a remote participation. That was fantastic. I could participate without getting stressed and discombobulated as I sometimes do. And the world changes and we learn more things. I've learned a lot about a lot of people, including myself, in the last few months. And I haven't been here. I wish I could have been, but because of standing orders, I couldn't have participated either. That's the odd thing. I conclude by saying I support a hybrid approach that prioritises in-person presence. Absolutely, this chamber matters. I hope that our votes continue to matter and that the government does not think that it has a majority. And I say that very respectfully but nicely. But this is a debating chamber. When the facts change, when the debate changes, when you're given information in this Assembly, you change your mind. And that must mean that you actually change your mind and listen and participate. And that means the government doesn't always get its way. I've been on both sides of it, never had a budget that wasn't actually always amended, knew it was going to happen. Democracy matters. Speeches matter. I talk too long. I'll sit down. But I hope people understand exactly what I'm trying to say in my Philip Ozef, Deputy of St Saviour way. And I urge colleagues to support this proposal and contribute to shaping the Assembly that works for us and now into the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Kovacs.
Thank you, sir. I didn't come necessarily prepared to speak, and my view as well was that Part C and the unforeseen part of it could lead to abuse at some point. But listening to all the points raised in the debate and thinking at what could be, even in my personal circumstances, made me change my mind. And we have to remember that besides being states members, we're human. I would refer to the Leadership Jersey Annual Survey that was issued, highlighting that in the last few years, on the top two priorities for all the employees' questions were, was work-life balance and flexible working, and aiming for an organization with values that align with my own. We have to think that the modern days require modern adaptation of working. This is a tough job. Either the public or members see it that way or not. It is a tough job. And I agree, we have to make all efforts to be present as much as possible in all the reasonable conditions in the Assembly, to participate in the democratic process that we took an oath for. But sometimes this is just not possible. And I want to refer to what Deputy Alves said as well, which could apply to paragraph C. We have different nationalities in this Assembly as well. We should have family members abroad. Doesn't necessarily have to be a deep illness that require my parents, for example, in Romania to need me next to them, but could be bound by different other very urgent circumstances that I will need to be next to them. In the same time, could be a very passionate subject in the Assembly that I care about, and I want to be able to contribute. I don't feel it would be fair for me to have to choose to be next to my parents in their deepest needs or to participate in the Assembly. Members would probably agree that in no matter what circumstance, I was one of the most present either in the Assembly or in committees, even dragging my children with me in meetings, which is not fair on them either. And if we have possibilities of where there's flexibility in that way of participating while caring for children, it is already covered. But there'll be different circumstances that Deputy Jean mentioned yesterday, like the instant days that weren't seen in the states days that are planned ahead. We also have to remember we're going to vote on principles, and you made it very clear that you'll also be issuing guidance on what those principles should look like. If we only think that some would abuse these flexibilities that we would allow, then I don't feel this is fair to, just because some would do wrong, to penalize the ones that for very reasonable circumstances won't be able to be here. And after all, it's still us on the floor of the Assembly that will decide and tax those reasonable conditions when they're coming for us to approve it or not approve it, or for yourself again to rule on the guidance that it's reasonable seen as such. This is neither to say as well to take the opposite approach, that if someone due to illness is away and has to, can participate, has to participate. Also, what I want to say, health is health, either being physical or mental. And although we do make efforts to our best ability, even when we don't feel very well, to be here, and we can be present in the Assembly, for our own health and well-being, could be much easier and speedier recovery to be home and participating online. What I want to say as well we live in a modern society. We want to be inclusive. We want people to also show flexibility with their employees and allow them to work at their best ability in the best way. We can do that either we're present in the chamber or participating remotely. And I truly believe that abuse that we're all worried about can also be stated in guidance, to have abuse avoidance guidance from the PPC. And again, the Assembly can decide and tax it on the approving or not approving on those circumstances. And I urge you to vote on all parts. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on this proposition? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close that part of the debate. Deputy Gardner, there were a number of questions, but first I think I should make an observation about what might have been taken as a ruling that I made earlier. In response to a question posed by Deputy Hull, I gave an indication of my initial view on the interpretation of Part B of the proposition, the one relating to health. Now, it seems to me that there is a long-standing convention that people cannot participate from outside of the island in connection with states' proceedings. Clearly, Part C would be a derogation from that long-standing convention, but Part B does not expressly mention participation from outside of the island. And I would not have liked my initial interpretation of the wording to be taken as a clear ruling to that effect when I have not had the opportunity of discussing the matter with the chair of PPC or indeed to confer on it. It is no small thing to override by an ad hoc ruling a long-standing convention, and therefore I do not do so. So my ruling, to the extent it's suggested that medical reasons would enable participation from outside of the island simply because they were medical reasons, should not be taken as a derogation from the ruling or a ruling to that effect. And I'm sorry if I have confused members in any way by saying that, but on further reflection, there is a long-standing convention which I should not overrule without mature reflection.
So may I just point to seek a clarification on that ruling, sir?
Yes.
So effectively what you are saying is that you are neither saying yes or no, but you're not saying no.
I'm not saying no. Again, what I'm saying is there's a convention which I'm not overruling at this point, but it is open, it seems to me, for that convention to be overruled either by the express wording, which does not, as it happened, appear in paragraph C, or by a collaboration and discussion between all members through PPC.
But providing information is provided in that you have appropriate conversations that could be envisaged under the current wording that we're doing.
It could be envisaged in forthcoming guidance, but I would require clarification.
I just wanted that positive. It's not nugatory.
No, it's neutral. I haven't overruled it at this point.
Thank you, sir.
That's all I'm saying. Deputy Gardner, do you have any questions that you wish for clarification?
I mean, one of these questions was definitely, I think, been answered that Part C might allow, but Part B, it depends, and I would like clarification in the closing speech from the chair of PPC, if the medical conditions outside of the islands would be included in Part B.
You can ask me.
Sorry, apologies, sir.
You can't make a second speech.
Okay, apology. No, I'm not. First, I would like to understand if Part A would be accepted, does it mean that parental responsibilities not on the health reasons will stop being valid reasons to participate remotely?
position is that if Part A is adopted and neither of the other parts are adopted, then all of the current arrangements come to an end, unless, in my view, we cannot achieve a quorum or there's an emergency, which are the two things which are carved out from that. But other than that, all the remote participation possibilities end if only Part A is adopted and not Parts B or C. But do you have another question?
Yes.
Deputy Garden?
Thank you. It's helpful. If Part A is rejected, can Part B and C be adopted as a standalone paragraphs?
The answer is no, I don't think it does automatically fall away.
Just a clarity, if Part A is rejected, we still can vote on Part B and separate on Part C. They're two separate parts, is it correct?
B and C are separate parts and they can be voted on separately, yes. That would be my understanding. I hear consternation, but perhaps there's not. Deputy Alves.
Sir, sorry, can I just clarify that then? What would be the point of having B if you've rejected Part A, which allows you for everything? If you then adopted Part B, what would be the effect of that? I understand the effect of C.
The effect would effectively be clarification and a particular subpart of the rule, I think. But what I may need to do, I'm afraid, is to adjourn for a few moments so that I can reflect upon this, because these are clearly the Assembly is concerned about the interplay between these paragraphs, and it's important that I am able to clarify that for the Assembly. And so it may be necessary to stop. But was there an additional matter?
Yeah, if I may, sir, thank you. And perhaps I could ask you this. I appreciate your clarification in regard to a ruling maintaining the status quo in regard to off-island participation potentially under B from a health perspective. And I know you need time to consider that. You may not do that in the recess now, of course, it'll take longer. But I would also ask you that Part C, I don't think actually allows for for what some members are asking for. If we vote for Part C, that would be for health treatment in the UK, because it would not be seen to be unforeseen. Once somebody's been diagnosed with a condition, then you have to take the treatment. So it may not be for today, sir, but some form of clarification would be very useful. Which of those two paragraphs would those health treatment conditions be covered in the advice that you might, the guidance that you would give in due course? Thank you.
Members were deputies.
Thank you, sir. This is designed to be helpful, sir. This seems like a bit like Groundhog Day yesterday. If you're in your conversations whilst we adjourn, it might be helpful to give guidance as to whether or not you think that in your judgment that matters that are being raised by members may be quickly resolved or not. We sit again in January. That's the next time we're sitting, and of course we are able to lodge alternative propositions pending review, and we could agree for those revised slight amendments to standing orders to be considered at the first assembly if we had a week's notice or so dealing with those matters. That might be a pragmatic solution, sir. I don't want to reference back, put it in scrutiny, move ahead. I'll sit down. Thank you, sir.
Very much indeed.
So, can I just confirm something? And at the risk of the ire of the Assembly, the reference back has occurred to me, and looking at Standing Order 80, I think it's 6 or 3, it does describe it perfectly. So can I just ask, if there is a reference back, we maintain the status quo as it is now in the meantime? Just to absolutely confirm that.
You're looking at 80?
80, sorry, so I've got my screen up. Standing orders, it's 83.1, proposal for a reference back. I'm not proposing it now. I just want to say the impact, if that was proposed and agreed, would be to maintain the status quo as we have it now until we come back with something. It would. I'm pretty certain, sir, but I think certainty is quite important during this debate.
Well, very well. The short answer is nothing will have been passed. If nothing will have been passed, the status quo ante will continue if there's a reference back.
So, looking at 83(1)(b), I think there are grounds for a reference back on this. I think there are many ambiguities which have been raised in the Assembly. And I can see both heads in hands and also nodding going on. So, I would like to propose a reference back, because it seems to me that there's a lot of support for some of the principles of this on all parts, A, B and C, but that there's so many unknowns here that I think PPC need to come back and consult specifically with members and give tangible examples and have of what should be in. So to clarify, for example, one of the ambiguities is something that Deputy Ayer raised about who can and who can't participate off-island on state's business and the exact circumstances, because I would like to vote for all of this, but I do fear, I think, like many members, that we might be binding our hands, and what we've got in front of us is too ambiguous, sir.
So can I propose the adjournment? No, not to allow you to adjourn for 15 minutes. Can I propose the adjournment to allow you to take counsel, sir?
Well,
I think my proposition was made first.
Sorry, the position is you have made a proposition for a reference back. Is that seconded?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That is now the issue that's before the Assembly. We can't adjourn at this point without deciding upon the question of the reference back. Now, the position is that I should seek to ascertain what further information or ambiguity or inconsistency is required. My understanding of what is being asked for is clarification relating to the ambit of both C and D, B and C. Perhaps the letters of the alphabet will be good. No, the clarification of the ambit of that and how voting for one and not for the others in various permutations and combinations would affect the outcome and what would then be binding upon the Assembly. Have I correctly identified the further information that's required?
So I think those are points other members have raised, and I think that would be helpful. But I think it is really to know what to give more definition to things like unforeseen, to the circumstances in which you'll be allowed to vote and participate if you're off island, and the questions of what constitutes health, etc. So I think, is that sufficient, sir?
Very well. That's the information that is being sought and the clarification that's sought. The debate now is on whether or not there should be a reference back. Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to allow you, sir, with as appropriate communications with the greffier and the chairman of PCC, to hold some discussions based upon not putting you in a difficult position of having to make you ruling by the chair. There's clearly some interpretation that may be required. After due consideration, you may decide that the wishes of certain members cannot be accommodated. That's not discriminatory, that is your guidance, and I would not propose a reference back, rather to respectfully say we should not have a reference back because we haven't heard from your conclusions after you have had a moment of reflection with the President of PPC. We can do that, we can move fast, and we can do things properly, and that would be my preferred way of doing it. Because leaving matters as they are would definitely not be entirely satisfactory when we have almost something that's subject to good interpretation, and possibly some further tweakings can be done sur le champ. Thank you, sir.
Well, Deputy, it's really not for me to speak to that. You've made a speech as you're perfectly entitled to do, and there were others who I will call upon. But any conversations that I might have can simply give rise to an interpretation of things are as they currently stand. And I'm not sure that, and if they come up with answers that people don't like, there may still need to be an argument about a reference back. I'm not of course, expressing a view one way or the other, but I don't know what the outcome of my discussions will be.
So I've got no evidence of the future, sir, and what your deliberations will be, and that's what I'm trying to say.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. I'm not convinced by the arguments for a reference back. I think there are dangers here for us. I think people talk about us talking about ourselves. We've spent several hours on this, and the points of clarification that seem to me to be ones that can be sorted out by some focused guidance from yourself, sir, in the chair, to interpret those clauses. And if members are not convinced by that, they can vote against these proposals, and the status quo prevails. And so I think really we should be reaching a conclusion here. We're in danger of slightly falling into ridicule here. It looks like we haven't properly done our homework in terms of reading the proposition. That if there are ambiguities in terms of meaning, I think they can usefully be clarified by yourself, following some good questions and good points made, for example, by Deputy Gorst. And I would like to see this conclude today because all the options remain open to us. The Conservative option is to vote down all the proposition, all the clauses, and then if members are really unsure about what they want to do, that is what they should do, because that returns us to the status quo, and separate propositions can then be brought forward. And I would also say that many of the other points that have been raised are points that will be clarified through guidance, as is made clear in the proposition, that those issues can be sorted out by detailed guidance provided by yourself through consultation with PPC and no doubt with all members.
Thank you, sir. I have to say, I think we have to be careful here. I understand we've spent some time, but we have to make correct decisions in this assembly. Yes. This is very important. There's another thing to be pointed here. So the reason we are where we are with this proposition in the first place is because there seems to be a general acceptance that the current situation is not adequate, so some change needs to be made. By simply voting against all of this and keeping the status quo, it will be at least, I believe, sir, 6 months before a proposition on this could come back to the Assembly again. So there would be a huge period where we've agreed, it seems tacitly, that the current situation is not particularly adequate, so we need to move forward. So the problem we've got at the moment is that there is definite ambiguity in the interpretation of where we are. I, sir, was quite happy to vote for A and B, but not C, if B included off-island treatment, which you cannot control, because that's what we do. We have a relationship with the UK. I was quite happy with those two, but because there's ambiguity around that, sir, now I'm unsure. I cannot be representing appropriately if I'm unsure on what I'm voting. And it may be inconvenient, it may not look nice, I get that, I absolutely accept that, sir, but we have to stand up and say we are going to make the correct decisions in this Assembly. A reference back could be brought back quickly because we've got that period now until January, sir. I believe that the outcomes could be made, so I don't know if a reference back can also include any amendments to the proposition being lodged by PPC to make some sort of clarity. So, for example, sir, in Part C, if there was an amendment that said unforeseen circumstances or for defined medical care off island, that would, I think, solve the problem for a lot of people. In B, for example, I think we have an agreement, sir. We're in a terrible position of coming to an agreement across the Assembly for once. We want people to access the Assembly. We don't want health concerns to get in the way. And we want people to, in the reality of the world, to be able to access if they're having healthcare somewhere, because we don't want them excluded. So I think there was uncertainty in some of the speeches yesterday, and this is not criticism, so it's an observation, that people were saying, you must vote for this because people have children and childcare duties. B does not deal with that, and that's the issue. We need some real clarity in what we're doing, because I don't want to see people excluded because of childcare as well. It's 2024, so we need to move forward. So I think a reference back is exactly the right thing to do, just to get that clarity, bring it back within one sitting, have the clarity, know what we're doing with this, then we can move on. Otherwise, we will do nothing, because I'm not sure I can vote for any of this now. And I mean, it would be 6 months at least before anything comes back. That, sir, and I say to members who, I understand what you mean, but that, sir, is the massive waste of time if we do that, because we've not moved forward at all. So I would urge a reference back, clarity, perhaps a state's members' briefing on what's coming forward, because I think a lot of this debate should have been done in the state's members' briefing beforehand, and I understand the difficulties of arranging those. Honestly do. It's really not criticism of PPC or anybody, just saying how's the best way to come to a resolution of this. So that would be why I would say reference back and, if you like, with recommendations of the way we could move forward here. Thank you, Senator.
Very much, Deputy. I have Deputy Morell, then Deputy Southern. Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. To me, the requests for clarifications that we have underway at the moment are the evidence for the need for a reference back. It is nothing else but that. I had read this in advance of this Assembly, and I had interpreted it in a very different way to clearly many other members of this Assembly, and indeed yourself, sir. So from my perspective, and I believe most other members of the Assembly would have read this beforehand, and many members of this Assembly, sir, are probably sitting here thinking, well, I didn't interpret it like that. I interpreted it like this. And it is the very fact that we are asking for so many clarifications that I think the actually tidiest way to deal with this, and the least embarrassing way for the Assembly to deal with this, is to ask PPC to refer it back to PPC and ask them to go off and do that work, which will enable those clarifications to be made evident through the actual report and proposition themselves. And so, sir, I'm fully supportive and agree with Deputy Ward. A reference back is, in my view, the best way forward, because because we are asking for so many clarifications. And yeah, thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. And yes, to a reference back. That's exactly what a reference back is for, to gain more information and proper interpretation of what we're passing. And it's absolutely vital that we reference it back, I think, because what we've done is give the bailiff a say in what guidelines should be in place. And I've just heard the bailiff say, and I think I need to talk to PPC about what my guidelines are going to be. And that seems to me that it's perfectly obvious that reference back is the way forward. We can do it in short notice, we can do it, and we can do it better than we're doing at the moment, because at the moment we've painted ourselves into a corner.
Deputy Hart.
I just want to say thank you so much for PPC for all their work, and I agree with what Deputy Southern said on Deputy Ward. But it's not just about childcare, it's also about care for elderly parents and relatives.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I know that PPC spent lots of time and consulted, but maybe we need to do a bit more of that. Now there is a list, and one of the items that I would like to add to reference back, it was raised by Deputy House and Deputy Kovac, and I would like to echo. There are various reasons why emergency needs, and it's not necessarily health related, when you have family living outside, close family, brothers and sisters, that might require your attendance for some time in different country, but not necessarily for the health reasons. So I would like this will be considered as well.
Yes, could you please clarify, sir, whether if the reference back is approved, that enables PPC or anyone else to submit an amendment to their own proposition?
The answer is yes, it does. It may be that there will need, depending upon dates, there may be the agreement of the Assembly to take it on a truncated period, but yes, an amended proposition.
Useful.
Very much. Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. And like Deputy Gardner, I would like to add something to the reference back, and that is to understand, perhaps from yourself, sir, how parts 1B, where consultation, where your guidance is given, what recourse members have to challenge that guidance if the Assembly at large don't agree with what you publish, sir. And that's something perhaps that could be clarified in full leave with you and PPC. But given the wide-ranging ambit that this could cover, members may want the safeguard to know the full procedural flow, as it were, once this were to be adopted, whether there would be revisions likewise. And so that would be something I think would be very helpful for members to know that what guardrails will be there.
Well, I won't venture into that at this point, given that that will be something to be dealt with when and if the matter returns. Any other member wish to speak on the matter of the reference back? No other member wishes to speak? I close the debate. Deputy Tadier, did you wish to?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Just to respond, first of all, to Deputy Renouf, I share the frustration, but what I would say is that this debate has been a useful debate. We've actually thrashed out the issues. From where I'm sitting, it sounds like we're all in fervent agreement that actually we want some fairness here, and we want to actually allow people we accept that people are human and that we have lots of calls on our time, and it's right that sometimes we can't be at the Assembly and that we should be able to participate somehow, but we need to put more meat on the bone. And I think the reference back will be an opportunity for PPC to listen to the transcript of this debate, not listen to the transcript, but listen to the audio, the video, watch the video, read the transcript, ascertain what the actual facts are and what members would support. Because I don't want any member saying to me, and I don't want to be that member saying, I wouldn't have voted for this if I'd have known this was going to happen, if I knew that paragraph B and C would be interpreted in that way. And that I know that already some of our constituents have some disquiet, and I wouldn't want our constituents to ask us, why did you vote for that? And for me to have to say, because I didn't know that's what it would mean. So I think that this is absolutely a relevant part where we should be using the reference back correctly. There's clearly some guidance that does need to be issued, and respectfully I'd say actually I think the guidance needs to be issued first, not for us to agree to this and then say go away and issue some guidance. I think the cart has been put before the horse in that respect, and I think what comes back, whether that's in 2 months or in 3 months, will actually be a much better proposition, which we all know where we are, and hopefully which we can all support, if not unanimously, then by an overwhelming majority, sir. So I do maintain the reference back.
Do you call for the avail? That is called for. Invite members not present in the Assembly to return to their seats. The vote is on whether this matter should be referred back to PPC for further clarification and an amendment if necessary, and ask the greffier to open the voting. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition for a reference back has been adopted. 28 votes for, 11 votes contrary, 3 abstentions. Very well. The matter, therefore, is referred back to return on another day.
Is it too late?
Yes. Yes, so you wanted to have the 11? Yeah. Yes, 11.
Those members voting contre, the Connaught Harbour, St Clement and St Saviour, Deputies Ayer, Gore, Stefanen, Moore, Ozef, Renouf, Wilson, Andrews, and the Connaught Harbour St One.
Very well, the next item of public business is the public elections extension of eligibility criteria P.65, lodged by Deputy Tadier. The main responder is the Chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. There's an amendment lodged by Deputy Scott. Do you accept the amendment, Deputy Tadier?
I've withdrawn the amendment.
That amendment you've withdrawn?
Yes.
Very well. Well, there is no amendment lodged by Deputy Scott, so would you ask the greffier to read the proposition, please?
The States are asked to decide whether they are of opinion, A, that the requirement that constables and deputies must be British citizens should be removed, and B, to request the Privileges and Procedures Committee to bring forward the necessary legislative changes in time for the 2026 elections.
Yes, Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. Just letting my colleague out there.
Yes. Clearly not a reflection on
No, I
what's to
was
come.
going to say, sir.
No.
Sir, yesterday and today, I think, well, yesterday we had a lot of talk about us needing to be a more representative assembly, and the fact that actually, in many ways, we are I think we have become a much more reflective and representative assembly of the wider community that we represent. So just to outline very quickly what this is, in some ways this proposition is very simple, and I think one of my colleagues said it almost seems too simple. Is there a catch? And I don't think there is a catch. It's not the first time I've moved this, but it's the first time that new members will have maybe been able to consider this. What I always hope is an interesting proposition, and the first thing to say is that I accept that it will stir in some people some very deep and visceral feelings. There are people who seem to support this staunchly and others who oppose it staunchly. And so what it is essentially is that there's currently a requirement under our election law which says that in order to be elected to this place, but in order to, not just to be elected, but in order to even be a candidate to get to the point of election, that you have to be part of a niche club, I would call it, but that's probably being slightly colourful at the beginning, is that you have to be a British citizen. And we make no distinction about how you get that status as a British citizen. It could be that you're born in Jersey. It could be that you're born in another part of the British Isles. It could be that you're born in a British territory and have acquired British status by that virtue. What it does mean is that, of course, if you don't have British nationality, you can't stand for election. That doesn't have to be the case. It's a choice that has been made at some point, and it's not a choice that is made in our sister island of Guernsey, which is probably the most comparable jurisdiction that we have, sir. They have a bailiff like you, sir. They have a deputy bailiff who also presides, I was going to say in their assembly, but they don't have an assembly. But when they do sit, it's the bailiff or the deputy bailiff who presides. They are also under Norman customary law, sir, and they have a very similar system to ours, and we know that both the similarities and the differences are something that we celebrate in between the two islands. And of course, this is not an appropriate time to mention either the Marathi or the ferry service, so I won't be doing either of those two things. But from my perspective, I think the Guernsey model have got it right when it comes to this very narrow article that they don't have in their law, which they just simply don't have something which says you have to be a British citizen. What does that mean? Does that mean that the system of democracy in Guernsey is somehow inferior to ours? Does it mean that the public is somehow being at a disservice compared to us? No, it doesn't. Ultimately, their elections work in the same ways that ours do. They've got a slightly different model. But ultimately, if somebody wants to be a candidate and they think that they have something to offer to their island community, like in Jersey, they put themselves forward. And ultimately, it's the public of those islands that decide who gets to stand for election. The difference is, of course, if you're a Portuguese, a Polish, a Romanian, a French, and we can go on, Kenyan, Ugandan citizen who lives in Guernsey who doesn't have British nationality, you can still put yourself forward, and it's the people of Guernsey who will choose whether you want to do that, whether they want you to be a candidate. In Jersey, we don't have that option. So a Portuguese person who's non-British can go over to Guernsey, stand for election, but a Guernsey person who's a Portuguese heritage, not British, can come to Jersey. They can't stand for election. I'm anticipating there already some of the arguments about reciprocity, which I'll come back to. But let's bring this back to a very simple stage, because this isn't about making us like Guernsey. It's actually about saying, what could Jersey be like if we wanted to be? I'm just really preempting the argument. Is there anywhere else in the world that does this? Yes, there is, and it's very close to us, even if they seem a million miles away sometimes. We had a statement earlier, I think, from Philip Ozef, and a Deputy Philip Ozef, as he called himself, but Deputy Ozef, as I will call him, sir, who said, I want an assembly that wants all people to participate. I want an assembly where all people can feel that they can participate. I do want that as well. I don't just want that for elected members. I want that for anyone in our community who thinks that they've got something to offer, somebody who meets all of the other criteria. So if they're 18 years old and they've lived in Jersey the requisite amount of time, it shouldn't really matter whether somebody's moved here from Scotland, from Liverpool, from Yorkshire, from the Falkland Islands, from St Helena or Northern Ireland, or whether they come from St Juan or Lekeneve or Lemoy, or any of the other Vantains or Cueillettes that exist throughout the island. If you're in St Juan, it's a Cueillette, of course, or whether you are from France and Portugal. Because there is a continuum here, sir. If I can transport us back, and if you'll allow me, sir, to be slightly metaphysical for a moment, if we imagine that we're in a time machine and we come back to Jersey 100 years ago and we're sitting in this assembly. 100 years ago, we would have been also debating a proposition around election criteria and eligibility. Previous to 100 years ago, it would have been about who could vote, and then there would have been votes about and debates about who could stand for election. But of course, as I look around the Assembly, first of all, none of you women would be here, sir, if I can say that through the chair, because women were not allowed to stand for election. And of course, some upstarts suggested that women should actually, first of all, have the vote, which I think they got in Jersey in 1919. But of course, there is a caveat to that. It wasn't all women. It was women who were actually had to be judged on the status of their husbands. And then, of course, when poor Caroline Trashy tried to stand for election, I think it was in 1923, she couldn't stand for election. And even when women were allowed to stand for election, it was only subject to them having the right marital status. So it was determined to whether they owned properties, for example, and what the status of their husband was, I think I'm correct in saying. And of course, the arguments would have come forward, well, we're no different to anywhere else. Lots of countries don't allow women to stand for election. Lots of countries don't allow women to have the vote. Go back a bit further, and of course, it was working class and middle class men who also didn't have the vote, who didn't have the right to stand for election. Politics was only for the right type of people. It was about people who were already aristocrats. If there were nominal elections, they were largely done deals, and it certainly wasn't for the public to have a say in what took place. So I want to bring this back to values here. So do we judge somebody's value based on where they come from? I don't. I don't generally, in my interactions with people, ask to see a passport. And I think certainly in most jobs that you do, and I know this isn't a typical job, but it is still an honour and a privilege, and it is a job because we all do lots of work within this job in various different forms. I don't think we judge people on where they come from, but we do also value the fact that people do come from different places, not just physically, but metaphorically speaking. Now, another question which you might also have your own answer to, can you be a Jersey person if you're not British? It's a simple question. Can you be a Jersey person if you're not born in Jersey? Are you a Jerseyman or a Jersey woman if you're not born here in the island? And it's a question which may speak to the piece of island identity work that the minister behind me, Deputy Labby, is doing. And I think the answer to that is clearly yes. I think it has to be. We're not defined simply by where we're born, but we're defined by our attachment to the place we live in. And a number of years ago, and I think it might have been during the first election, I remember knocking on the door, and I was a sprightly 29-year-old. And I noticed looking in the mirror the other day, not only have I got white hairs, but I've actually got a white eyelash. So I'm not sure quite what that means. But I'll take it as an ominous sign, sir, that it might be a lucky eyelash today. And I knocked on a door and I talked to a lady, and I couldn't quite understand. I don't think there was any irony in it. And somehow the conversation got round to identity, you know, where you're from, etc. Not from me, incidentally. And she said, "Oh, I'm not really a Jersey person. I'm not a true bean because I've only been here for 50 years." And I said, "Well, I've only been here for 29 years, so you're more of a bean than I am. And I think we could actually call you a crapo, madam." And I said, but of course, so I don't know whether she was, I don't know whether there was any irony in that, what she said, because I think there are so many people in Jersey who feel that Jersey isn't for them. They said, you know, how many times on the doorstep do we have to tell people, and the greffier has to put out information at election time, telling people that they can vote, because you only need to be here 2 years to be able to register to vote and to actually cast your vote. The other question I would ask is, should we be treating one part of our community different from another part of our community? Now, I recently read an interesting obituary in the Jersey Evening Post, which was written by our former greffier, Michael Delahaye, who from time to time writes very good articles. I could see by the way it was written, and I suspected it was him, and sure enough it had MDLH at the end of it. And it was about a former member who some of you will remember is Deputy Jerry Dorey, who sadly passed away recently, sir. And he left a legacy because it was somebody who, I would say, he was quite an interesting character from what I could see from the outside. I was only observing politics as a young person back then. But he seemed both quite conservative in some ways, but he clearly had a motivation to make Jersey, and certainly to make government and this assembly, a more inclusive place. And one of the things he did, because he'd been involved with the Jersey Rights Group, is that I think it was in 1994, there were a number of moves that came forward from within the Assembly to try and make election ability for those who could vote, sir, to widen it. So it was the case up until 1994 that if you were somebody who had lived in Jersey, for example, 30 or 40 years, and you were Portuguese or Polish or French, and I certainly remember that's the case in one of my, for one of my uncles who was married to my dad's sister. He'd lived here 30 years at that point, couldn't vote. So he paid his taxes in Jersey. He followed what went on in the island. You know, Jersey was his home, France was no longer his home, but he was not participated to even cast a vote at that point. And I would go back to the point that there is a link between voting and actually putting yourself forward for election, that there's the two are linked really. And that there has to be a historical continuum that I think we are on that line of continuum where the next logical step, not just because it's something that we have to do, but I think because it makes sense, I've not heard any arguments against it, is that we should be allowing anyone in our community who's been here the requisite amount of time to put themselves forward. Because what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, I've heard some remarkable suggestions in previous debates, and I think this Assembly, I think, is a bit more open-minded than previous Assemblies, and actually we welcome that diversity. I've heard suggestions that we could all be taken over by Russians, for example, or by the Chinese. That may well be the case, but you know what they've got to do is that they've got to get through a test, and it's called the electorate. And I think the electorate are actually is ultimately where the democratic safeguard lies. So it doesn't matter whether you're a member of a party, whether you're an independent. Ultimately, I hope whether you're not British or you are British, that the public will not be interested in any of those things, but they'll actually say to you, what have you got that you can bring to the job? What are your qualities? What will you do for this community, and what will you do for me and my family? Those are the kind of things that I want to know in what you'll bring to the table as a candidate. If it so happens that you might bring some other qualities, that you've lived somewhere else, and that you're multilingual, and that you've seen other ways and you've got experience of doing things which might differ to the way we've done things traditionally here, then I'd also be willing to hear that. But ultimately, that test is there, sir. The reason I'm pleased that the amendment has been withdrawn is because this idea of a test is quite crucial. To have had one test, sir, where you have to pass a test in order to do another test, which is the election, I think is actually would have been a nonsense. And I think the idea is that actually, if you've got something to bring to the table, that you can put it to the electorate, that is the ultimate safeguard. It doesn't matter whether you're standing for constable, I'd suggest, or standing for a deputy. The amount of scrutiny that person will receive, both from the media, from other candidates, and from the electorate, should be sufficient to ensure that those that get elected to this Assembly in the future, whoever they are, and it may not be us, of course, have a sure enough mandate, and that mandate doesn't need to be a piece of paper which says that you have X or Y nationality, sir. I don't think there's any more to add. If I did, sir, I would simply say that in writing the report, there are clear precedents. So I will say this as a final part, because I think it is important. There were also changes made in the late 90s and into the 2000s, for example, about who could serve in now His Majesty's Police Force, I think, or the Jersey Police, States of Jersey Police, as we would otherwise call it, sir, in Jersey. There is no requirement for somebody to be a British citizen to be a police officer, either for the States of Jersey Police or the Honorary Police. And I know that in previous debates, some of the constables mentioned that they have senior honorary officers. I look at St. Peter's, for example, and I know the individual. I don't know whether he's a British citizen or not, and frankly, it's of no importance to me, but I do know that he's a Portuguese, of Portuguese origin, and that he does a very good job in that parish for the people of St. Peter who have elected him. And he is elected, incidentally, as an honorary police officer by the people of St. Peter. So if St. Peter can elect, and I'm hypothesising here, and I think it's the case, can elect a non-British police officer, which they can do in every parish of our island, they should at least be able to elect constables who are not British, And if constables can get elected as being non-British, then I think that should also extend, of course, to deputies. So there are precedents, I think. And let me just talk about the idea of reciprocity. One of the arguments I'm sure will come up, hopefully from people who are still open-minded, and not just as an excuse as though, well, they can't go and stand in other countries. What does Portugal do? And I'd say it's up to every country to decide what their election rules are, both for voting and also for standing for election. So I don't think we would say just because we can't vote in Portugal necessarily, we can't vote in Poland or in Romania, and I don't know if that's the case necessarily. I think it's the case in some of those. We wouldn't simply say, well, just because they won't accept ours, we're not going to accept theirs, because we make rules for our community. We don't make rules for people who do not live in Jersey. And so I think the idea of reciprocity, I think, is an easily flawed one, sir. I'm going to leave the comments there. I look forward to the debate. I hope it will be a respectful one. As I said at the beginning, I understand this does stir quite emotive issues. Some people are saying simply, that's the way it is. I'm a proud British person, which I think I also am. But I think we need to have a more sophisticated argument than just saying that's the way it is. So that's the way it almost must be, sir. I do move maintain the proposition, and I welcome the debate, sir.
Proposition seconded. Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. So I decided to withdraw my proposed amendment to this proposition after seeking advice from the director of the Jersey Cyber Security Centre. I don't wish States members' time to be wasted, particularly after such a long state sitting already, debating an amendment that doesn't help address the concerns I have regarding the main proposition as a States member with ministerial responsibility for cybersecurity. States members have been invited to attend past briefings by the Jersey Cyber Security Centre. The Centre also has briefed the Economics and International Affairs panel on its activities, of which Deputy Tadier is chair, some time before this proposition was lodged. I therefore am surprised at his persistence at bringing this proposition in its current form. Those States members who have attended those briefings should be aware of the Jersey Cybersecurity Centre's relationship with the UK's National Security Agency, the NCSC, of which the Jersey Cybersecurity, the JCSC, is our equivalent. Those who have will be aware of concerns relating to security threats emanating from Russia, and also that our constitutional relationship with the UK has led to the States Assembly approving changes in our telecommunications law in response to foreign security threats of a different nature. And as an immigrant of partly Chinese origin, I have supported this. I am in favour of inclusivity. However, after researching Deputy Taddy's proposition extensively with the existence of GREF officers, my ministerial responsibility for cybersecurity led me to seek the advice of the director of the JCSC. And he confirmed there are potential national security implications to consider. Globally, we are in very difficult times, and it could be perceived that the ultimate protection we have is that our elected representatives are not loyal to any foreign power. Operationally, there may be challenges with non-British citizens having access to information that may be necessary to fulfil the role of a minister. This is a difficult area, not least as it touches on the role of the United Kingdom in our constitution too, and in some of the services that it provides to this community. The research I mentioned, and indeed as Deputy Tadier has mentioned, identified only one jurisdiction in the whole world with legislation that appears to enable non-citizens to stand for election beyond citizens of countries with which that jurisdiction has close constitutional ties. And that does indeed happen to be Guernsey. Given that Guernsey's enabling legislation restricts a prohibition on convicted criminals standing for election to British citizens only, it clearly is discriminatory in a way that does not appear rational. So I would suggest that the Guernsey legislation does need to be reviewed. Legislation in the Isle of Man allows non-citizens to stand if they have indefinite leave to remain or free passage in the UK. So that essentially defers to UK decision-making as in respect of the constitutional ties with the UK too. Indeed, there is a security clearance procedure in the UK, and I wonder if this could be a way forward for a future proposition of a similar nature. Deputy Tadier, in his report, did not mention the security clearances members of the police may need to satisfy to serve in their role. I don't currently know if that's the same with honorary police, and I perhaps will leave it to the constables to look into that matter, along with that oath, which I did mention in the report to my original amendment. There are reasons why some jurisdictions do not allow dual nationality, and we seem to be responding to that. But the reasons why they don't allow dual nationality are reasons of national security. I believe this matter highlights the need for all states members to have cybersecurity in the forefront of our minds. And I invite states members to contact the director of the JCSC directly if you wish to discuss this matter with him. And I would, of course, be happy to discuss the position further with any member too. I thank Deputy Tadier for helping to educate me in this matter, and I hope he will look more into the security implications too, and other ways of addressing potential economic and security barriers to non-citizens standing for election. In the meantime, I urge members to vote against this proposition on the grounds of its implications for the island's security. Thank you, sir.
So I just wanted to ask the previous speaker for a point of clarification.
Yes. So,
Sir.
We are now quorate. Yes. Yes, you give way for a point of clarification, Deputy Scott. Yes. What's your point of clarification?
During the speech, the deputy suggested, was talking about cyber security risks due to dual citizenship. I just wanted to check what the suggestion was, because a number of us are dual citizens in this assembly now. So I just wanted to get some clarification on that from the speaker about what that risk was.
Sir, I did not say there was a cyber security risk from dual nationality. I said that certain countries do not allow dual nationality, and I believe that the reasons are due to interests of national security.
That was my recollection of the speech, I have to say.
So could I ask for clarification?
Would you give way for a further point of clarification?
Indeed, sir.
It would be. Is the member able to give any indication of what was said by the JFSC? Because it's, at the moment it sounds like an insinuation. So is there the JCSC, sorry, Jersey's Cyber Security Centre, JCSC? She's made an assertion that they have concerns about this proposition. It's the first I've heard about it, and if they do, are those comments able to be circulated?
Well, are you able to clarify what the concerns as communicated to you?
Sir, it's not clear to me if the deputy has had any conversations with the director of the JCSC of this or attended any of the briefings on JCSC, so I'm unable to account for him not having heard of these concerns before.
That wasn't what the deputy was asking. The deputy was
Yes,
asking
the actual...
what you understand the concerns to be.
I have disclosed everything that I have been told by the director of the JCSC in my speech. I cannot provide any more detail.
Well, that's a perfectly valid answer. Does any other member wish to speak on this proposition? Deputy Ballard.
Sir, I give full marks to Deputy Tadier for perseverance doggedness even, but not, I'm afraid, for much else. I hope that his proposition will go the way of others that he has brought, because there is a really important principle at stake. The principle is not of equality, as he suggests. With all due respect, the story of Caroline Trashy is completely irrelevant. Mrs. Trashy was denied the ability to stand for election because she was a woman, and there was nothing she could do about that. That was indeed an injustice. But foreign nationals who wish to become members of the states can do something about it. They can do something about their current ineligibility. They can take up British citizenship, as indeed a few current members of the Assembly have done, and good for them. Nor is the important principle one of inclusivity or diversity. We have a more diverse Assembly than ever before. Not quite equal in terms of gender, but getting there. And we have a more inclusive government, for better or for worse, than we have ever had before. No, the important principle, sir, is one of national identity. I think we sometimes get confused about our national identity because it means two things. Sometimes we call it island identity, as Deputy Labby does. And that indeed is an inclusive concept and embraces those of many different nationalities who have made Jersey their home. And I'm completely with Deputy Tadier on that. I absolutely agree with everything that he said about the importance of bringing together all those of different nationalities within our community. They are all, as Deputy Tadier states, eligible for jury service and membership of the honorary and states police. Not every country does that, but we do, and good for us. But these are levels of engagement in the community which are of less significance than membership of our Assembly. Membership of the states involves loyalty to the sovereign, the king, not to any other king or queen or president, but to King Charles. One of my children spent nearly 30 years of her life in India with her family. She could not even vote in elections for the National Assembly, let alone stand for election. You need to be an Indian to represent India. And so it is, apart from Guernsey, as Deputy Tadier tells us, with, as far as I'm aware, every other country in the world. You need to be a national of the country to represent its people in the national legislature. So why should we be different? And this question goes really to how we regard our assembly, this state's assembly. In the prison board case before the Privy Council in 1891 and years after, Crown Counsel described the states of Jersey as a common council, a council for the island, not a legislature which was entitled to the privileges of a legislature of a colony, which was under consideration at that time. Is that how we regard the status of our assembly? Are we a town council like the Council of Bognor Regis or Guildford? I think that we have the status of the House of Commons or the Lok Sabha in India. If that is pride, then I plead guilty. I am intensely proud of our assembly, of which I have been a member in different capacities for more than half a century. As it is as important a legislature, in my view, as the legislature of any other sovereign country. It is a national legislature. It is the only legislature, indeed, to which the citizens of Jersey can elect representatives. And like the national legislatures of every other country, apart from Guernsey, I think its members should be composed of nationals of the state to which we all belong. I think we should be proud of our citizenship and keep it as a requirement for membership of our assembly. I think it is as simple as that.
Deputy Mizek.
Thank you, sir. And I'm afraid it ain't as simple as that, because there is a fundamental flaw underpinning everything that Deputy Balash just said. So he said that this wasn't about the principles of diversity, equality, or inclusion. It was about the principle of national identity. And the flaw in his argument is that the nation he refers to is the nation of Great Britain, not Jersey. If there were such a legal concept as Jersey citizenship, this debate would be totally different, and it would make perfect sense that were there a route for acquiring sovereign Jersey citizenship, that maybe that ought to be a requirement for people then to serve in Jersey's sovereign legislature. But it's not. It's asking us to have citizenship of a jurisdiction which is not Jersey, that jurisdiction being the United Kingdom, a country which offers citizenship to, I don't know, maybe about 80 million people, not just in the UK and Channel Islands, but around the entire world as well. And putting that requirement on candidacy for people running to this assembly supposes that a whole range of people have a greater loyalty to this place than others who, through their lives, have demonstrated much greater loyalty to Jersey. The only thing they haven't done is acquired a piece of paper confirming themselves to be a citizen of the United Kingdom, many of whom won't have done that for the simple reason that it doesn't actually offer them much in Jersey by way of rights here, because of all the other things that we have dispensed of citizenship as a requirement for. So when we have this debate, I think of a friend of mine who I went to school with, who's a great person, and in conversation with her on more than one occasion, I've thought, this person would make a good politician. This friend moved to Jersey when she was 6 months old. She was born in Madeira. She was educated in Jersey, she went to the same school as me, has known no life other than the life she has in Jersey, but would not be eligible to run for election here because of the fact that she happened to have been born in Madeira rather than Jersey and had only 6 months there before establishing her actual life here. And there is a supposition here that somehow this person is less loyal to Jersey than I am because I happened to be born here and got given British citizenship, which I never asked for, I never applied for, I simply got it as a matter of law because of where my mother happened to be when she gave birth to me, and that is it. So to be a states member, you have to swear an oath of allegiance. That's what I have done, that's what members of this assembly who hold dual nationality, of which there are several, have done as well, and that is where those issues of loyalty can rightfully be addressed. So I think the questions about loyalty to any foreign power and the cybersecurity concerns raised by Deputy Scott strike me again as bizarre and not really relevant to this consideration here. Sir William Joyce was a British citizen, more commonly known as Lord Haw-Haw. Kim Philby was a British citizen. Both of those people were traitors who were not loyal to the country which they had nationality for. And I raise this point, sir, because your loyalty to Jersey is not based on what piece of paper you have. It's based on what you feel in your heart, whether you love this place and whether you wish the best for it. And I actually resent the implication, and I resent this as a Jersey-born person with British citizenship, that friends I have who have given just as much to this island as I have and who care just as much about it as I should have less rights than me because they happen not to possess one piece of paper that I have that I didn't even ask for. I just got given it. The absurdity underpinning this, sir, is that somebody can come from Pitcairn Island, which is as far away from Jersey as it's possible to be without going into outer space, come to Jersey, lounge around for a few years, offer nothing, do nothing, not work here, but within that time period will be eligible to run for election to the Assembly here. Yet somebody who moved from Madeira or any other place at 6 months old, knows no other home than this place, speaks English, was educated here, volunteered for all sorts of charities or the Honorary Police or anything else, doesn't have that right. So I regard that as discrimination, pure and simple, and I regard it, frankly, as a foolish restriction on eligibility for election to this Assembly because of the people out there who have talent and passion and drive to make the island better are excluded from it. And it really is not as simple as Deputy Balash would suggest, that they can do something about it and apply to become British. Firstly, it doesn't address the question of fairness here, which is that many people in Jersey who moved to Jersey and are British citizens acquired their British citizenship outside Jersey, and therefore it's nothing to do with their connection to Jersey through which they have that citizenship. But it costs money to apply, to go through the test, and to get your British citizenship, money which no other candidate would be asked to spend. And that is just unfair, to ask them to do it for this one thing, when in reality it offers them nothing, it doesn't demonstrate any loyalty or commitment to the island, to ask them to become a citizen of the United Kingdom in the absence of Jersey citizenship. It simply puts a block in the way for some passionate and dedicated islanders to contribute through our political system to island life, but give people who have acquired that right through nothing that they have done in Jersey or been connected to Jersey from is discrimination, wrong and unfair. Deputy Balash also, I think more than once, made the assertion that there aren't other countries apart from Guernsey that do this. And sir, he is wrong. There are lots of countries, or let's say nations rather than countries, that do not strictly say you must be a national of this particular country in order to run in our legislature. So the United Kingdom actually doesn't have a strict, you must be a British citizen rule to run for Parliament there. You can be an Irish citizen, you can be a Commonwealth citizen, so you can serve in that Parliament without being a British citizen. The devolved parliaments of the UK, you don't have to be a British citizen. I just quickly checked the Welsh Senedd to see what their restrictions are. You can be a European Union citizen and run for the Welsh Senedd. You do not have to be a British citizen, and of course you can't be a Welsh citizen because there's no legal concept as well. So I regard it as bizarre to say that a requirement to serve your island through our political system requires you to show your commitment by becoming a citizen of somewhere else. I actually regard that as unpatriotic, to be perfectly frank. Jersey doesn't have its own legal concept of citizenship, therefore it's an irrelevant consideration in who would make a good person to represent us in this Parliament. And so I hope one day in the future we can recognise that contribution made by so many people to our island who have come from all around the world and adopted Jersey as their home and who feel it in their hearts as much as anyone else, that they'll be able to run for election rather than prioritising one group of immigrants
by virtue that they've come from somewhere where they get British citizenship over another group of immigrants, which is inequitable and unfair.
Deputy Poré.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to contribute to this debate simply because I believe that in the Assembly presently, I am probably the least British person in our Assembly, and I apologize to any of the members if that is not the case. The reason why I say that is because English isn't my first language, as you all know. I was actually born in a country that was not British by any means, Angola. And in fact, I don't have one nationality, I don't have dual nationality, but I consider myself to be someone who's got 4 different nationalities. But having said that, I have been in Jersey for 35 years, longer than anywhere else I have lived in my life. And like Deputy Mezek says, I have given my life to Jersey. So therefore, I should be able to contribute to the island in terms of politics, as I am doing at the moment, and I am very grateful to it. I do disregard other members' comments about the dual nationality. I think the dual nationality, or even more like I said, can only make you stronger. I didn't choose in many ways some of the nationalities I've acquired through my life, but they have been part of my own life experience. On that note, I would like also to say I am very proud to be myself as a person. My identity is a different matter. And when it comes to my British identity, it's an identity I acquired, is a piece of paper that I had to pay to actually be considered to be British. Has made no difference to my heart or to the way I think, but simply is a piece of paper to show that I have passed the test that considers me to be British. I think that is wrong in many levels because my alliance to Jersey, it comes from within, it comes from the time I've spent in the island and for the efforts I've made and for what I created as a person on this island. And I want for the island as much as any other person who could have been born here because this is where I've decided to make my life. So, that is one important point I wanted to make. Another important point I wanted to make is presently Jersey population is 50% of Jersey-born people. The other 50% are made of British and non-British citizens. We would like an island to be more inclusive in terms of engagement, in terms of politics, in terms of people feeling that they belong. The other 50% who are non-Jersey born, they can come from anywhere else in the island and settle here in the same way as I have and choose to do the utmost for this island with the best effort in their heart. And they should not be put in a position to be sidelined because of a piece of paper. And then I take myself to my third point. This particular citizenship that we can acquire, those who are not born in Jersey or in Britain, is actually a very expensive commodity. Deputy Mezek mentioned that for some people in the community who may be considering becoming politicians, that cost is very high indeed. It's over £1,000, I think, coming to £2,000 to be a British citizen. If we want a population of Jersey to feel inclusive and to feel they belong and to vote and to engage with Jersey politics, are we actually saying if you don't have that amount of money, you cannot be part of the island? I think it's discouraging people. Having to pay for that extra expense is already going to put a lot of strain on those people in the community who come from low-income backgrounds, but nevertheless, they have the right and feel that they can do the job of a politician. By having to acquire a British citizenship that is highly expensive, in my view, not only expensive as the people have to pass tests. I had to pass 2 tests, one in British English history and another one in Jersey history, just so I could prove that I was loyal to Jersey and I could have this citizenship. Without that, I wouldn't be here talking to all of you. So I do very much support Montfort, or Deputy Tadia, excuse me, on his proposition. And I completely disagree with the 2 other previous speakers in terms of that nationality. You need to be national to Jersey to show how much you care for the island. I would challenge anybody in that assembly who tells me that they have better value for the island than I do. All I have and all I am right now is in this island. Okay, and that's all I want is the best for the island, so that the island can carry on providing for my children once I've gone. British nationality is a deterrent to those who have been here long enough and they feel they have got a lot to contribute. So for that reason, I am supporting Deputy Tadia. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. I think one of the most interesting things that Deputy Tadia said in his opening speech was, what's the worst that can happen? And I think Deputy Scott and Deputy Balash have attempted to answer that question, one by raising explicit national security concerns and one by raising more general questions of loyalty. But I find those arguments very weak. They've been dismantled to a significant extent by members making points about the grey areas that already exist in this situation. Dual nationality means that we are saying that somebody is a potential threat to national security if they do not have British nationality, but not if they have nationality that's split with another country, even though it might be one of these supposedly hostile actors that we fear so much. But the main point I want to make, and the only thing really that I feel I have to add to this debate, which hasn't been mentioned so far, and is around the sense of the accessibility of this assembly, not in the physical sense that we were talking about earlier, but in the sense of how we are perceived as an assembly in this island. And I think we are still perceived as exclusive. We are still perceived as a place where people do not think of to themselves, that place feels like it's for me. That's an open, accessible kind of thing, the kind of thing that I would want to be involved in. There are all sorts of subtle signifiers that we give out in island discourse, not just in this assembly, but in island discourse around the sense of belonging. What does it mean to belong in Jersey? And Deputy Poirier has just given us a very passionate exploration of what it means to belong in Jersey from somebody who was not born here and whose heritage is elsewhere. She has dual citizenship, and by that she is able to stand, but she could equally not have dual citizenship, and would we think to ourselves, oh dear, that's not right for this island. I don't think we should be thinking that. And I think these subtle signs of exclusion, this question of what is it to belong in Jersey, is all around us if we think about the language we use. There's that age-old question of how long do you have to be in Jersey before you are considered to be Jersey? How many years qualify? How many generations qualify to be considered Jersey? I remember being told by a fellow minister, actually, your problem, Jonathan, is you've been away from the island too long. Interesting, isn't it? These little signifiers of whether you belong or not, whether you have the right to contribute, what level you are allowed to contribute at, dependent on your birthplace, on your length of residence, on whether you've gone and got a citizenship or not. I think the real issue here is the electorate can choose. The electorate is not easily fooled. Maybe they were, maybe they elected me and they were easily fooled, who knows. But in general, I think the electorate is able to look at candidates and see. And they can see whether a candidate is likely to be somebody who is not got their own interests at heart. That's the whole point of the democratic process. And of course, they also have to swear the oath, as Deputy Mesic pointed out. The oath commits them to this island and to the Crown. And we all try and discharge that oath in the best way we can. And we don't sit around thinking, I hope we don't sit around thinking, well, that person is not contributing as much as they could because they were not born in Jersey, or they didn't live here very long, or their family doesn't have a Jersey name, or it's a Jersey name but only a recent Jersey name because it's only recently become a Jersey kind of name. So I think those subtle signifiers of belonging are things we should think about very closely and very carefully. And we are an international island. We are a multinational island. The census shows us to have I think it's 100 nationalities, certainly close to. We are an extraordinarily diverse community. We ask for contributions from those people in terms of taxes. We ask them to contribute to the island in many different ways. And it seems to me that if one of those people who is contributing to the island wants to put themselves forward, is prepared to swear an oath of loyalty, and is prepared to contribute in the way that they can contribute through this assembly, that we should do that. And the ultimate test of whether they are considered able to do that in a way that is appropriate, given their nationality and so on, will be the electorate. I suspect it won't be used very often if this were to pass, but I think it is we should send out that signal that we are open. We accept that this is an island that depends on immigrants. It always has. And we should celebrate that diversity and make lower barriers where we can without threat to national security or to the loyalty to the Crown, because those issues are very easily overcome in practice. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Tadier, in his opening, leveraged the words of Deputy Ozef from the debate prior, now referenced back. And the four words I captured were, where anyone can participate. But that's still not true after this proposition. There are eligibility requirements for seeking public office regarding how long you've been in Jersey, either cumulatively 5 years or immediately preceding an election, 6 months, with obviously the changes with the small tweaks around that. So it's not that anyone can participate, and it isn't unreasonable to have guidelines or rules, as I think Deputy Rob Ward prefers, to stipulate what is suitable, what parameters do we work in. We've seen, and PPC having provided the history, some of us who weren't here did tune into the former debates on changes to eligibility criteria. We see a history from the PPC comments as to how the debates around eligibility have gone. Members can read Hansard. So to me, I approach this with the dangerously open mind that Deputy Tadier wants us to approach it, asking, is this, what is the worst that can happen, and is this what we want to happen as well? And the question that revolves around mainly in my head is, well, what is British nationality? What is its core tie to Jersey? What does that deliver to a person versus not having it? And Deputy Mezek gave a very strong case that British nationality has nothing to do with Jersey's identity, was my reading. I looked to him for whether I understood that. It's a 50-50 for those who can't see in the public gallery. And I take that on board. I think that's an interesting position, but we hear from Deputy Balash that British nationality is inherently tied to Jersey's identity, and that somebody who wants to represent Jersey at its highest level in the legislature inherently should be a British national. And I don't know where to go on this one. And I quite liked Deputy Scott's amendment. I'm slightly disappointed it was withdrawn, because one thing when Deputy Tadeo and I discussed this, and he said, I hope you're a man who can approach this with an open mind. I said, well, there are other ways to do this. Is if somebody is willing to stand and wants to stand, what about part of standing, the commitment is, A, they meet the eligibility criteria to be a British citizen, and that once they are elected, should they be elected, they receive British citizenship. So, in essence, it's not a barrier to standing, but it's a commitment to the nationality and to the citizenship. And I thought, actually, Deputy Scott's position was a good movement towards that, saying you would be both eligible and you've shown that you would be willing, but you are not predetermining. So I think members could hold views in their heads, or they could stand up and share them. And I really want to understand the wider Assembly's position on what the tie is between British citizenship is to Jersey's identity, if any other member has those worst case scenarios, but also that upside. What are the legitimate reasons that somebody feels no association to British citizenship, but does inherently in all their being to Jersey? And I think that is what members should be sharing today, so that we can all make an informed consensus-based decision.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak, Deputy Kovacs.
Thank you, sir. Like Deputy Pore, I'm one of the members of the Assembly which had to take the citizenship. I took it before Brexit, so even before considering standing for election. Jersey has always been a welcoming, outward-looking community, thriving through the talents and contributions of both locals and those who have chosen to make it their home. Our society has made great strides in inclusion. Non-British nationals gained eligibility, how we heard, for jury service in 2000, voting rights in 1994, and the right to serve in the States of Jersey Police in 2004. These changes recognize that an individual's value lies in their skills, experience, and dedication to Jersey, not their nationality. The question we face now is similar. The qualities of a candidate for the State's Assembly should be commitment, experience, and vision for Jersey's future, not their citizenship. The notion that only British citizens can represent our diverse population no longer reflects the island we are today. There are over 60 languages spoken in Jersey. We must ensure that anyone willing to contribute to public service has the opportunity to do so, and leave it to the public vote if they are the right candidate to elect. I will contradict Deputy Balash, as there are other countries doing that. One I know is New Zealand, where you can stand after being there 1 year resident with a few conditions. In Belgium as well, European Union nationals are allowed to run for federal parliament if you have been there 5 years. Concerns about loyalty and cultural identity are valid, but we must ask, does loyalty to Jersey require British citizenship? Many people who have lived here for decades and contributed greatly to Jersey's success are deeply committed to its future. Should they be excluded from the political process simply because they are not British? I believe the answer is no. While some fear that allowing non-British nationals to stand for election may dilute Jersey's identity, we must remember that identity is not about nationality. It's about shared values commitment to our community, and being truly representative of the people we serve. Turning to the amendment now withdrawn from Deputy Scott, I will still refer to it as it's been mentioned. That was seeking to introduce a citizenship test for non-British candidates, requiring them to pass a test on Jersey's history and culture before being eligible to stand for election. While I understand the intention behind it, and I also believe you should have knowledge of the place you're willing to stand for, I have to argue that British nationals are not required to take such a test, even though they may have less knowledge of Jersey's history and culture than long-standing residents who are not British citizens. If we are going to ask anyone to pass the citizenship test to stand for election, it should apply to all, regardless of nationality. To not require British citizens not Jersey-born, who could also be from, how we heard, a Commonwealth zone on the other side of the globe, to take this test while asking others to do so, creates an unfair and discriminatory standard. I also have to comment on the reasons for withdrawal, with Deputy Scott stating you have to not be loyal to other countries as a state's members. How is the British citizenship paper making any difference in that? Or offer protection on what Deputy Scott has mentioned regarding national security? In my opinion, a DBS check mandated for all candidates would offer more value for that. The proposition is about inclusivity, fairness, and forward thinking in an island where the blending of different cultures and nationalities involved in decision making has proven very beneficial so far, either they have citizenship or not. I want to revert to the main reason why the original proposition needs to be supported. The financial burden associated with the naturalization process for British citizenship is very costly. And from my own experience, the total cost can go up to £2,000, not just £1,300, how Deputy Scott mentioned in her withdrawn report. For many residents, this cost is simply out of reach. Asking fellow islanders to go through this length around 1 year process and expensive process just to have the opportunity to serve Jersey in a political capacity with such a high cost could seem unfair. Moreover, certain nationalities are not allowed to hold dual citizenship, and for many individuals, this makes the citizenship process an impossible hurdle. Two countries with nationals strongly embedded in Jersey that I'm aware of not being allowed dual nationality are Spain and India, but there could be more. Considering the context of Brexit and how beneficial it is for Spanish people to be part of the EU, why should they be forced to give that up to take British nationality instead in order to stand for election, which may or may not also be a successful candidacy? I know I wouldn't if I could not have dual nationality. Would that make me less loyal than I am to Jersey or a threat to the national security? I don't think so. We must recognize that these individuals could have deep ties to Jersey, contributing for years, and they should not be denied the right to stand for election simply because they cannot afford the citizenship process or because their home country does not allow dual nationality. In conclusion, I ask to support the original proposition by Deputy Tadier. Let us move forward with a policy that reflects the island's values of inclusion, merit, and fairness. Let us allow residents who have proven their commitment to Jersey through sometimes years of service, dedication, and passion for the island the opportunity to stand for election without being held back by outdated nationality requirements. Let us trust the electorate to make the final decision. After all, there is no better way to test the candidate's worth than through the democratic process itself. If they are not suitable, the people of Jersey will have the final say at the ballot box. I therefore ask members to support the proposition. Thank you.
Very much, Deputy. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I feel I need to speak during this debate, and my views a bit different from other dual nationalities that spoke until now in this debate, and I explain why. On first look, it seems very simple, fair. Actually, it's not simple, it's fair, as Deputy Mask said. Why make political office dependent upon citizenship? It kind of feels unfair because we all live here, we pay taxes, we contribute. But this is, for me, it's real life. And somebody who made conscious decision to take new citizenship twice in my life, because my original where I was born was, I basically needed to sign off, said I don't want any more this citizenship. It was Soviet Union citizenship, and I needed to go through the process to actually say I don't want to continue to be citizen. So I did take twice decision to take. And for me, it's not the paper. Paper, it's easy part. It's a psychological decision. What does it mean to be a citizen? And it is, for me, how do I feel? Why it's important for me? I didn't have to take British citizenship. I had my permanent residency that I gained through establishing a business in Jersey. I could continue to live all my life in Jersey without taking citizenship as a permanent resident. I didn't think about political office when I took my citizenship. It was way before I decided to stand for the election or even had an idea about political office. I didn't entertain at that time. But it was important for me because at that point, when I decided to take my citizenship, I had a clear decision that I see Jersey as my home. And for me, it's an extra commitment that I decided, again, I'm speaking about myself, the process, the psychological process that I went through by making decision to go through the citizenship. And I did need to do the exam, as everyone else. I did need to go through the paperwork. And again, the reasons kind of people giving, it's expensive. So maybe we do need to find a way, and I told it at the previous debate, to make sure that the people who would like to run for the office, and it's important for them, they will get sort of subsidy to make sure that they get. And actually, I do believe this is what was proposed by Deputy Morse. The second one is to pass the exam. It's complex, it's difficult. Gosh, if we cannot pass the exam, it will be very difficult to read the reports and to be in the to be a states member. Somebody who passed the exam, it's not complex. You can pass this exam. To go through the paperwork, it's very, very long admin process. It's extremely long admin process. But again, we are dealing with the paperwork, and it's maybe an inconvenience. And why would a person decline to take citizenship? What would be the reason that persons say, actually, apart from like Spain and India that are not allowed dual citizenship, but they have their own reasons. I know that some parliaments will not allow to stand for the election with dual citizenship, even though, I mean, they allow dual citizenship, but they cannot stand to the elections if they have a dual citizenship. And I cannot understand why people don't want to take citizenship, apart from the exam and expense. We're talking about political leadership of Jersey, and we are talking about very maybe few people who would like to stand to election, and we need to find a way to support them. People talk about citizenship as allegiance, and I think it's important, but for me, I always ask the question, if as a state member I was stuck abroad because of the uprisals, something happened, emergencies, I don't have British citizenship, would the British embassy would be taking care of me, or my original embassy need to take care of me? I don't know, maybe it will, but maybe it, I don't know. If a person will commit a fraud and run away, I'm giving different options and it's real life, so we have a different citizenship and they can go to the different countries. I'm not trying to say that people will do this, but do believe that people naturalized, and I remember myself going through thorough checks on all my backgrounds, who I am, what I am, my convictions, not convictions, don't have convictions, I'm I'm naturalized, but I needed to present all paperwork thoroughly through, or to go through all checks. Again, and the last thing that probably say, it's difficult because I would like to see and to be honest, I do believe that our assembly much more diverse compared to what was 20 years ago before Deputy Alf, the Deputy Geda and myself were elected at the previous assembly. For 20 years was nobody with English as a second language. We could see that we increased the numbers in this assembly. And unfortunately, and this is how I'm looking at the minister with responsibilities for island identity, we didn't progress with other possible framework. And this is where my previous proposition, Life in Jersey, was almost passed. And I know the Deputy Scott withdrew her amendment. I wanted to have something that the public, because we represent public, all nationalities, including the British national people with British citizenship, that they will feel if the people, they have this connection, we have something that happened as a pre-step. Maybe I'm too conservative, but this is where I feel we need to be flexible, we need to open, we need to provide the options, but it's about what I'm feeling and the question, why not? And this is my contribution to this debate. I think if amendment would be still there, I would likely to support the amendment, but based on what I say, I'm not going to support the proposition.
Thank you very much. Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. And I'm going to keep it short, but I wanted to just flip this discussion a little, and because I was triggered to speak by Deputy Scott and Deputy Balash talking about loyalty. In our family of four, we have 3 nationalities. I have 2 nationalities, and like others who've spoken, I'm from Jersey, I'm British, and I got another one. Why? Brexit. Because my family is European. My family are Dutch and my 2 children are also British. But at the time of Brexit, we were living in Belgium. I may not have been living in Belgium. I could have easily been living in the Netherlands. I was hoping to be living in the Netherlands. But if I was living in the Netherlands now, after Brexit, I would need to probably become, and want to be there, I'd want to become Dutch. But to become Dutch, I'd have to give up my British nationality. So if I gave up my British nationality, this is all hypothetical, of course, and lived in the Netherlands, but then came back to Jersey, I wouldn't be able to, even though I was born in Jersey, I would not be able to be standing with you today as a states member. But luckily, I was living in Belgium. And because I'd lived in Belgium more than 5 years, in fact, at the time it was about 12, and the Belgians hadn't got wind of Brexit the day after Brexit and what that would mean, it was pretty easy to become a Belgian. I didn't have to do an exam. I had to go along, prove I could speak some French. I could choose French or Dutch. I chose French because it's easier to work out administration in French than it is in Dutch. And it wasn't a long admin process, and I paid €500. I'm now able to live in Europe with my family if I chose to. That is why I became Belgian. And I'm sorry that that's now on Hansard. Of course, I'd go Belgian. But I wanted to give that flip side, that, of course, it could have been that I was living in the Netherlands and I had to choose another way, and I had to choose my being a Dutch so that I could be for my family. And of course, I want to be European for my family. We don't want to split up when we go to the border and have to split when in sometimes very long queues. We want to go together. I want to be able to move to Europe with them at any opportunity. I would want to have that with them. But that could mean, it could have meant theoretically that I would have had to have given up my British passport for that. So was mainly what I wanted to say was, it's complicated. Is my loyalty any less to Jersey because of that technicality that I would have had to have gone to be with my family? Nationalities, and I think what Deputy Mezek said about pieces of paper, our identities are so complex, and they always have been. And nationalities and borders have always caused massive frictions. They continue to do that now with many conflicts. And I think I think that going back to what many have said, I think the test is not that nationality test. The test is the electorate who will decide if you are the right person to represent them in the States Assembly. That loyalty, if you need the loyalty, that loyalty of the oath that you do when you are first elected. And those are the tests that need to be, not back to that point of nationalities that actually, as I've just said, can be paid for quite easily.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Ozick.
Thank you, sir. I'm only rising to put into context some remarks that I made in an earlier debate, which have been used in this debate. I absolutely agree with inclusion and diversity and a wide range of spectrum of individuals. However, I do believe, sir, that in this Assembly that one should have British nationality. And I absolutely fundamentally believe that if one is going to take an oath of office, then we take an oath of office in the having British nationality. I will say one final thing just on the issue of dual nationality. In the fullness of time, were there to be situations where dual nationality were not possible, which it is for the vast majority of cases. I've just looked up the Dutch situation. I understand that. Belgium does allow it. But there are also exceptions allowed for Netherlands dual nationality. I think if you stand for a parliament, sir, you must be a national of that country. And in the fullness of time, where there may be residents, I'm not aware of any residents of Jersey that can't take the dual nationality that want to stand for this Assembly. They can do it. They should do it. The United Kingdom does. And if there were to be certain circumstances, maybe we could consider that in the fullness of time. But I'm not persuaded by the arguments. British nationality is a requirement. And I just needed to caveat those earlier remarks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. It's definitely an uphill battle for Deputy Daddy. I was just thinking about it because the one thing we all know is that 100% of us in this room are British citizens. So in that sense, and it tends to be the case that when you have a group of people who share something in common, they're often not willing to change that or dilute that, for want of a bad word. But what we've been hearing, and I think Deputy Jeune spoke about it very well, is the difficulty with identity. And I think this comes to the bottom, this comes to the foundation of this discussion. Is identity means, our national identities mean so many different things to so many different people. It is a genuine pleasure, and I'm so delighted that we have Deputy Gardner, Deputy Kovac and Deputy Porry in the Assembly, who bring completely different perspectives, having been brought up in the main elsewhere outside of our island. Obviously, we have people who were born in the UK and moved here subsequently, and we have people who were born in Jersey and have lived most of their lives in Jersey. We are, in that sense, a diverse Assembly. But what I was thinking of was, as I was glancing at Deputy Joseph's socks, was the Union Jack that he's wearing on his socks, and it got me thinking about identity and national identity. And I know, I've stood here before and always say my priority, my identity, is tied entirely to Jersey. I have no UK ancestors, none, anywhere. Exactly. And for me, the Jersey flag is the flag that speaks to me. I know I'm standing next to the Union flag, but the Union flag doesn't really mean much to me personally. I see it as a flag of another country. And in fact, I've just been looking it up. It's not even the flag of another country, because it's not legally the UK's flag. It's de facto the UK's flag. There's no legal basis to it, as I understand it. Feel free to correct me, sir, if you see otherwise. I believe that this is correct. And so it's a de facto flag of the United Kingdom, and Jersey is not a part of the United Kingdom. And so from my perspective, the flag to my right is not my flag. I don't see it that way. I understand that other people see it that way. They feel that it's the British flag. It's not the British flag, it's the flag of the United Kingdom. But that's how they see it, and I get that. It's also the flag, as Deputy Balash was talking about, of the royal standard, I assume, is the flag of the monarch, and that has precedence over the Union flag. So in a sense, maybe Jersey should be flying the royal standard more often. I don't know if that's legally viable, rather than the Union flag. But all of this confusion that I'm talking about is really just to show you how confusing identity is and how confusing national identity is. You know, I'm very much someone whose identity is rooted only in Jersey. You know, I've lived in a few other places, but 90% of my life has been lived here. Equally, I know my parents-in-law have lived in Jersey longer than me, because they arrived before I was born, but they're both from England, and so but I know they feel incredibly Jersey too. In fact, my father-in-law is so many ways more Jersey than I am, but he wasn't born or brought up in Jersey. And really, and I know Deputy Scott has quite rightly raised certain security issues, and I think as we do move into, really sadly, I mean unbelievably sadly, a more unpredictable and potentially, and I really sincerely hope not, a more potentially warring world, I do know we do have to think of national security issues. And from that perspective, Jersey is linked to the United Kingdom in terms of security, and I do accept that. But for myself, I also then think Jersey doesn't have an army, Jersey doesn't have a navy, Jersey isn't privy to any military secrets, as far as I understand it. Jersey doesn't have that level of need in that sense. We are not militaristic. We have been in the past. There are plenty of castles and towers to remind us of that, but we aren't these days, and I do like to think that we won't go to war with France anytime soon. And so those towers, etc., are relics of the past, I hope. That also got me thinking, why do we have a requirement for British citizenship? And then that made me think about the French element. It's quite possible that the requirement for British citizenship came about by the desire to stop French people coming into our parliament. You know, 100, 150 years ago, there was a lot of anti-French feeling in Jersey. A lot of anti-French feeling in Jersey 100, 150 years ago. I don't know the history, this is just my supposition. It is possible that British citizenship there was to make sure that French citizens didn't become members of our assembly. I don't think people would be so worried about that today if there were French citizens or Belgian citizens in our assembly. I don't think it would be seen in quite the same way. So I've been sitting quietly listening and really thinking all these things through, from national security to what it is to be Jersey, because in my mind, that's what matters here. And I'm still not entirely sure how I'll vote for this, but I think it comes down to, I think Jersey needs to find a more firm expression of its own identity. And I think it would be a good idea for Jersey to, as far as the State's Assembly is concerned, to find a route to enabling people to identify as Jersey in order to become members of this assembly, rather than being linked to having to be British. I think, to me, that's what matters. And that could include, and as people have said today, the oath that we take includes, if you wish, does include an oath to the crown. Again, something I have no issue with. I have no problem with our monarch being King Charles. That's where we are. That's the 800 years of history that we all ascribe to. But I think it is perfectly reasonable to have loyalty to the crown and Jersey, as opposed to the more ephemeral, more difficult to understand, less linked to Jersey, this idea of Britishness. I think we have changed as an island. And I think, we are happy to have people from different nationalities in this assembly. But I think the thing that's missing at the moment is us really understanding how we define that sense of being a part of Jersey as your reason for being in this assembly. And I think that's the bit that Deputy Labby, Carolyn Labby, will hopefully be working very hard on as well. And I think it's worth us, perhaps with PPC, with Deputy Labby's work, really thinking hard about that. How do we find a way to define somebody as Jersey in order to stand in the assembly as opposed to Britishness? Thank you, sir.
Could we just give an indication as to how many other people wish to speak in this debate, without calling on them in particular? So that at least 4 or 5 people still wish to speak. Is the adjournment proposed?
Yes, sir, I think that would be sensible.
Very well. The Assembly stands adjourned until 2:50.